In the unforgiving wilderness of Montana, a man who'd buried his heart with his family heard a child's cry from the depths of an abandoned well. What he pulled from that darkness wasn't just a little girl, it was a second chance he never asked for. But when she looked up at him with dirt-streaked cheeks and said, "You need a wife, and I need a dad," Logan Hale's carefully constructed walls began to crumble. This is a story of survival, redemption, and the family we choose when fate refuses to let us die alone. Stay with me until the end of this journey, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels across the world. The fog rolled across the Montana hills like a living thing, thick and suffocating, swallowing the landscape in gray silence. Logan Hale rode through it with the ease of a man who'd long since stopped fearing what he couldn't see. His horse, a steel-gray quarter horse named Ash, picked its way carefully along the ridge trail, ears swiveling at every sound the mist carried and distorted. Logan didn't come out here for pleasure. He came because the emptiness matched what he carried inside, and because up here, in the skeletal remains of old mining territory, no one asked questions. No one expected conversation. No one looked at him with pity or curiosity about the wedding ring he still wore on a chain beneath his shirt. He was 34 years old and felt ancient. The land here was treacherous, pockmarked with abandoned wells, unstable mine shafts, and the rusted remnants of a gold rush that had died 100 years ago. Most people avoided it. Logan knew every dangerous inch of it, had mapped it in his mind during countless solitary rides that sometimes lasted days. It was his sanctuary and his purgatory, all at once. That's why the sound cut through him like a knife. A scream, high-pitched, terrified, and unmistakably young. Ash's head snapped up, and Logan's entire body went rigid. For a heartbeat, he thought he'd imagined it. The fog played tricks, carried sounds from miles away, made you hear things that weren't there. But then it came again, weaker this time, edged with tears. "Help! Somebody help me!" Logan's heels touched Ash's flanks, and the horse surged forward. They moved fast despite the poor visibility, Logan trusting his mount's instincts as much as his own memory of the terrain. The voice came from the east, toward a section of collapsed mining operations he'd marked as particularly dangerous. "I'm coming!" he shouted into the fog, his voice rusty from disuse. "Keep calling out! Let me hear you! I'm down here!" The voice was small, desperate, echoing from somewhere below ground level. "I can't get out, please!" Logan pulled Ash to a stop and dismounted in one fluid motion, his boots hitting the rocky ground hard. He grabbed the rope coiled on his saddle and moved forward carefully, testing each step. The fog was thinner here, burned off by the late morning sun that struggled to penetrate the cloud cover. And then he saw it. An old well shaft, its wooden covering rotted away and collapsed inward, leaving a gaping hole in the earth about 4 feet across. The stones that had once ringed it were scattered and broken. Logan dropped to his knees at the edge and peered down into the darkness. 15 feet below, illuminated by the pale light filtering through the fog, a child stared up at him. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. Her dark hair was tangled with dirt and debris, her face streaked with mud and tears. Her jacket, too thin for this weather, was torn at the shoulder, and he could see scrapes on her small hands where she'd tried to climb the slick stone walls. But what struck Logan most wasn't her size or her injuries, it was her eyes. They were dark brown, huge in her small face, and filled with a peculiar mixture of fear and determination. She wasn't hysterical, she wasn't frozen in panic. She was looking up at him like she'd been waiting for him specifically. "Hi," she said, and her voice cracked. "I've been down here a really long time." Logan's throat tightened. "I know, sweetheart. I'm going to get you out. Are you hurt?" She considered this seriously, looking down at herself like she was taking inventory. "My knee hurts and my hands, but I don't think anything's broken." She said it clinically, like she'd had experience assessing injuries. That sent a cold finger down Logan's spine. "That's good. That's real good." He was already uncoiling the rope, his hands moving with practiced efficiency despite the tremor that wanted to start in his fingers. A child, alone in the wilderness. How long had she been down there? "What's your name?" "Nora." She wiped at her face, smearing the dirt. Are you a cowboy? Despite everything, Logan's mouth twitched. Something like that. Nora, I'm Logan. I'm going to lower this rope down, and I need you to hold on tight while I pull you up. Can you do that? I think so. But she sounded uncertain now, looking at the rope and then at the walls around her. What if I fall? You won't fall. I promise. He tied a loop in the rope large enough for her to slip over her shoulders and under her arms. I've pulled up a lot heavier things than you, trust me. He lowered the rope carefully, feeding it down hand over hand. Nora reached for it eagerly, her small fingers grasping the hemp. It took her 3 tries to get the loop positioned correctly. Her arms were shaking, and Logan realized she was probably close to exhaustion and hypothermia. The well was cold and damp, a perfect environment for draining a small body's heat. Got it, she called up, her voice stronger now that escape was imminent. Hold on tight. Keep your arms close to your body. Logan braced himself, legs apart, and began to pull. She was light, terrifyingly light, and came up easier than he'd expected. But halfway up, her grip faltered, and she swung sideways toward the wall with a small cry. I've got you! Logan increased his pull, arms burning. Don't let go! I won't! And she didn't. Her jaw was set, her eyes squeezed shut, and she held on with a ferocity that seemed impossible for someone so small. Logan pulled her up and over the lip of the well in one smooth motion, then grabbed her under the arms and pulled her away from the edge. She collapsed against him, shaking violently, her small body racked with shivers and probably adrenaline crash. He did something he hadn't done in 3 years. He held a child. She was solid and real against his chest, her heart hammering like a frightened bird's. She smelled like dirt and fear and something sweet, maybe the shampoo her mother used. Logan's arms came around her automatically, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. Sarah would have been 7 now, almost Nora's age. You're okay, he heard himself say, his voice rough. You're safe now. Nora didn't let go immediately. She pressed her face against his worn canvas jacket and shook, her small hands fisted in the fabric. Logan held her and stared at nothing, seeing everything, memories he'd buried deep, threatening to surface. Finally, she pulled back and looked up at him. Her face was a mess of tears and dirt, but she was smiling, actually smiling. You came, she said simply, like she'd known he would. Of course I came. What are you doing all the way out here? Where are your parents? Logan looked around the fog-shrouded landscape, seeing nothing, hearing nothing but the wind and Ash's quiet breathing. Nora's smile faded. Just my mom, and I don't know where she is. We were camping, but then... She trailed off, her eyes getting distant. She told me to run and hide, so I did, but then I fell. Every instinct Logan had honed in his years as a ranch foreman and father screamed danger. Why did she tell you to run? But Nora just shook her head, her jaw setting in a stubborn line. I'm not supposed to talk about it. Logan didn't push. Whatever had put a child alone in the wilderness with instructions to hide was trouble he didn't need, but he couldn't exactly leave her out here. He shrugged out of his jacket and wrapped it around her small shoulders. It swallowed her, hanging almost to her knees. We need to find your mother. Do you remember which direction you came from? Nora pointed vaguely west, toward the deeper hills. That way, I think. But I was running for a long time. Okay. Logan stood and lifted her easily, settling her against his hip like it was the most natural thing in the world. His body remembered, even if his mind had tried to forget. We'll head west, see what we can find. You warm enough? She nodded against his shoulder, but he could still feel her shivering. He carried her to Ash, who turned his large head to inspect this new addition with patient curiosity. Nora's eyes went wide. He's huge. He's gentle. Logan mounted with Nora held securely, then settled her in front of him, keeping one arm locked around her waist. She fit perfectly in the circle of his arms, small and trusting. You ever ridden a horse before? No? But she didn't sound scared. She reached out tentatively to touch Ash's mane, her small fingers tangling in the coarse hair. What's his name? Ash. That's a good name. She leaned back against Logan's chest, seemingly content now that she was safe and warm. Are you married? The question came out of nowhere, delivered in that blunt way children have of asking exactly what they're thinking. Logan's jaw tightened. No. Oh, Nora absorbed this. Do you have kids? No. The word came out harder than he intended, and he felt her tense. He forced himself to soften his voice. Not anymore. Did they die? Logan's hands tightened on the reins, and Ash shifted, feeling his tension. He should change the subject. Deflect. Tell her it wasn't something they needed to talk about, but something about this child, this strange, fearless little girl who'd survived alone in a well, made him answer honestly. Yes. I'm sorry. And she sounded it. Her small hand came to rest on his arm, a gesture of comfort that nearly broke him. That must make you very sad. It does. They rode in silence for a few minutes, following a game trail that wound through the hills. The fog was starting to burn off, revealing the harsh beauty of the Montana landscape, rocky outcrops, stubborn pine trees, and endless sky. Then Nora spoke again, and her words stopped Logan's heart. You need a wife, and I need a dad. Maybe we could help each other. Logan pulled Ash to a halt. He looked down at the small head resting against his chest, at the tangle of dark hair and the thin shoulders under his too large jacket. Nora. I'm just saying, she interrupted with the perfect logic of a 6-year-old. You're sad because you don't have a family anymore. And my mom and me, we don't have anybody either, and you seem really nice, so maybe... She trailed off, suddenly shy. Logan didn't know what to say. Part of him wanted to laugh at the absurdity of receiving a marriage proposal from a child in a wilderness rescue. Part of him wanted to cry at the raw loneliness in her voice that mirrored his own. Let's find your mom first, he said finally, his voice gentle. Then we can worry about the rest. Okay. Nora seemed satisfied with this response. She settled back against him, her breathing starting to even out. But think about it. Despite everything, the strangeness of the situation, the danger that had sent this child running, the memories threatening to overwhelm him, Logan felt something crack inside him, something that had been frozen solid for 3 years. He didn't know if it was hope or just the first thaw before more pain, but he felt it. They rode west. The terrain grew rougher, the hills steeper. Logan kept Ash to a careful walk, scanning constantly for any sign of human presence. Nora dozed against him, exhausted from her ordeal, occasionally stirring to murmur something he couldn't quite catch. It was nearly noon when he spotted the campsite. It was tucked into a shallow ravine, partially hidden by scrub pine and rock formations. A small tent, old and patched, was set up near a cold fire ring. Supplies were scattered around, not strewn like there had been a fight, but packed up hastily, like someone had been preparing to leave in a hurry. Nora. Logan shook her gently. Wake up. Is this your camp? She blinked awake, disoriented for a moment, then focused on the tent. Her entire body went rigid. Yes, she whispered. But where's my mom? Logan dismounted carefully, keeping Nora in his arms until he could set her on her feet. Stay close to me. He approached the campsite cautiously, every sense alert. The tent flap was open, revealing a neat interior, sleeping bags, a few clothes, some books. Nothing valuable, nothing that screamed wealth or targets worth pursuing, but everything about this spoke of people running, living rough, staying mobile. Elena! Nora's voice cracked as she called. Mom! Where are you? No answer, just the wind through the pines and the distant call of a crow. Logan did a quick circuit of the area, reading the ground like text. Multiple sets of footprints, booted feet, larger than the woman's prints he could see near the tent. Men. At least 3 of them. They'd come from the east, surrounded the camp. Signs of struggle near the fire ring, disturbed dirt, a knocked-over coffee pot. And then the trail led north, deeper into the hills. The woman's footprints were there, but so were the men's. They'd taken her. Did your mom have a phone? Logan asked, already knowing the answer. Nora shook her head. She said phones could be tracked. We don't use them anymore. Of course not. Logan's mind raced, piecing together a picture he didn't like. Woman and child alone, camping rough in dangerous country. No phone, instructions to run and hide if trouble came. The child's casual knowledge of injury assessment, the fear beneath her brave facade. They were running from something, or someone, and that someone had found them. Nora. Logan crouched down to her level, keeping his voice calm despite the urgency building in his gut. I need you to tell me the truth now. Who is your mom running from? The little girl's face crumpled, and for the first time since he'd found her, she looked like what she was, a terrified child in way over her head. My dad, she whispered. His name is Calvin, and Mom says he's going to kill her. Logan felt ice in his veins. Domestic violence, pursuit across state lines, a man dangerous enough to track his ex through wilderness. This was worse than he'd thought. How long have you been running? 6 months. Maybe longer. I don't know anymore. Tears spilled down her cheeks. We had a house, and I had school and friends, but then Dad hurt Mom really bad, and she took me and we left in the middle of the night. We've been moving ever since. And he's found you. He always finds us. Nora's voice was hollow, hopeless. Mom tries so hard, but he always finds us eventually. Logan stood, his mind already working through options. He could take Nora to town, report this to the sheriff, let the law handle it. That was the smart play, the safe play. But the tracks were fresh, maybe 2 hours old at most. By the time he got to town, got the law involved, got a search party organized, it would be dark. And a man violent enough to chase his family across multiple states wouldn't hesitate to kill once he had what he wanted. The smart play would take too long. Logan looked down at Nora, at her tear-streaked face and her desperate eyes. He saw Sarah. He saw every child who'd ever needed protecting. He saw a chance to do something right, something that mattered, for the first time in 3 years. He made a decision that would change everything. I'm going to find your mother, he said, his voice carrying a certainty he hadn't felt in years. And I'm going to bring her back. Nora's eyes went wide. But there are 3 of them, maybe more, and they have guns. So do I. Logan moved to Ash and pulled his rifle from its saddle holster. It was a Winchester 1894, well-maintained and familiar as his own hand. And I know this country better than any of them. What about me? Logan looked at the campsite, thinking fast. Can you ride a horse by yourself? I don't know. I've never tried. Then you're about to learn. He lifted her back onto Ash's saddle, this time settling her in the seat alone. Ash is the gentlest horse in Montana. You hold the reins like this. He positioned her small hands. If you need him to go, you tap his sides gently with your heels. To stop, you pull back and say, "Whoa." Think you can do that? Nora nodded, her jaw set with determination. Where am I going? See that trail? Logan pointed to a clear path that led southeast. Follow it for about 3 miles. You'll come to a valley with a creek running through it. My ranch is there, a log house with a red barn. You can't miss it. His name's on the mailbox, Hale. Take Ash to the barn, put him in a stall, and wait for me in the house. The door's unlocked. You're not coming with me? I have to go get your mom, but I promise you, Nora, I will come back. Both of us will. He held her gaze, letting her see the truth in his eyes. You saved yourself from that well by being brave. Now I need you to be brave a little bit longer. She stared at him for a long moment, this strange child who'd dropped into his life like fate itself. Then she nodded. Okay, but you have to promise you'll come back. I promise. Logan adjusted the stirrups for her shorter legs, checked that she was secure. If I'm not back by dark, there's a CB radio in the kitchen. Channel 4, call for help. Can you remember that? Channel 4. Nora gathered the reins with surprising competence. Logan? Yeah? Thank you for finding me. He reached up and squeezed her small hand just once. Thank you for calling out. He stepped back and slapped Ash's rump lightly. The horse started forward, responding to Nora's tentative heel pressure, and Logan watched them disappear down the trail. Once they were out of sight, he turned north and began to run. He was alone in the Montana wilderness, armed with nothing but a rifle and a promise to a child, chasing after 3 armed men who had a 2-hour head start and a hostage. It was the first time in 3 years Logan Hale had felt truly alive. The trail was easy to follow at first. 3 men and a woman, the woman's footprints showing signs of stumbling, of being pulled along. They weren't trying to hide their tracks. They felt safe, confident in these hills. That arrogance would be their first mistake. Logan moved fast, using a ground-eating lope that he could maintain for miles. The years of grief had kept him lean and hard, and his body remembered this work, tracking, hunting, surviving in country that didn't forgive mistakes. He'd grown up in these hills, had learned wilderness skills from his father and grandfather before him. Men from softer places, men who'd tracked by phone and GPS, wouldn't know what they were up against. Within an hour, he'd closed the gap to under a mile. He could see disturbed brush from their passage, still slowly springing back. Fresh broken twigs. A place where they'd stopped to rest. And blood. Not much. A few drops on a flat rock. But enough to tell Logan that the woman, Elena, Nora had called her, was injured. His jaw tightened and he moved faster. The terrain was climbing now, the hills giving way to rockier ground. Dangerous footing. The trail showed the group slowing down, picking their way more carefully. Logan used shortcuts, paths only someone who knew this country intimately would recognize. He scaled a rock face that let him cut off a quarter-mile of switchbacks, his fingers finding holds with practiced ease. From the ridgetop, he finally saw them. 4 figures moving along a rocky trail below, maybe 800 yards ahead. 3 men in outdoor gear that looked new and expensive, the kind city people bought when they wanted to play at wilderness. And between them, supported roughly by 2 of the men, a woman with dark hair. Logan dropped into cover behind an outcrop and studied them through his rifle scope. The men were in their 30s or 40s, fit but not military. One of them, the one leading the group, had a handgun on his hip. The others didn't show weapons, but that didn't mean they weren't armed. They were dragging Elena more than walking with her. Her left ankle was swollen, visible even at this distance. That's where the blood had come from, a bad sprain or possibly a break aggravated by forced marching. And the man in the lead, the one who kept grabbing Elena's arm when she faltered, even at this distance, Logan could see the casual cruelty in the gesture. Calvin Wright. Had to be. Logan settled his breathing, considering options. He had the high ground and the skill to make a shot from here. But a rifle shot in these hills would echo for miles, and if he missed or if the other men were armed, Elena could be killed before he could help her. He needed to get closer, needed to create a situation where the odds weren't 3-1. He needed to be smart. Logan circled wide, using the terrain to stay out of sight, moving parallel to their course. They were heading toward an old mine entrance he recognized, one of dozens that pocked these hills. Probably planning to hole up there until dark, or maybe planning to... He didn't want to think about what they might be planning. The mine entrance was maybe a mile ahead, set into a rocky hillside with limited approaches. But Logan knew something they didn't. That mine had a second entrance, a collapse hole about 200 yards from the main opening, hidden by scrub oak and careful to reach. Dangerous, but possible. He could get ahead of them. Logan poured on speed, abandoning stealth for urgency. He had to reach that mine first, had to get into position. His lungs burned, his legs ached, but he pushed through it, driven by something he'd thought died with his family. Purpose. He reached the collapse hole with maybe 10 minutes to spare, barely enough time to catch his breath and prepare. The opening was tight, partially choked with rocks and old timber, but he squeezed through and dropped into the darkness beyond. The mine tunnel was pitch black and smelled of damp earth and rot. Logan pulled a small flashlight from his pocket. He never went into the hills without one, and moved forward carefully. The tunnel was partially collapsed in places, dangerous footing, but he knew where he was going. 50 yards of careful navigation brought him to a junction where he could hear voices echoing from the main entrance. "Yeah, make this easy on yourself," a man's voice, harsh and self-satisfied. "You know how this ends, Elena. You always knew. You think you can just take what's mine and walk away?" "She's not a possession, Calvin." Elena's voice was stronger than Logan expected, defiant despite obvious pain. "And I'm not yours either. The divorce papers say so." The sound of a slap echoed through the mine, followed by a cry. Logan's hand tightened on his rifle. "Divorce papers don't mean anything. You're my wife. Nora's my daughter. And you're both coming home. I'd rather die." "That can be arranged." The casual way Calvin said it made Logan's blood run cold. "But first, you're going to tell me where the girl is. You hid her somewhere, I know you did. Smart, running her off before we found the camp. But she's 6 years old, alone in the wilderness. She's probably dead already. Unless you want to tell me where to look? Silence. Logan could imagine Elena's face, the desperate calculation. Nora had been in that well for hours. She would have died if Logan hadn't found her. Elena had to be dying inside, not knowing if her daughter was safe or lost or gone forever. I'll never tell you, Elena said finally, her voice breaking. You'll never touch her again. We'll see about that. Logan made his move. He stepped out of the side tunnel with his rifle raised, the flashlight mounted under the barrel illuminating the scene in harsh white light. 4 people spun toward him, 3 men and 1 woman, exactly as he'd tracked. Elena was on the ground, blood on her lip, her ankle twisted at a bad angle. Calvin was standing over her, his hand raised for another blow. The other 2 men were off to the sides, and one of them was reaching for something under his jacket. Don't! Logan's voice cut through the space like a whip. Hands where I can see them, all of you. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The tableau held. 3 men caught in the act, 1 woman bleeding on the ground, and Logan Hale standing in a tunnel with his rifle trained on Calvin Wright's chest. Then Calvin smiled. It was not a nice smile. And who the hell are you supposed to be? The cavalry? Someone who doesn't like bullies. Logan kept his aim steady, his finger resting lightly on the trigger guard. Elena, are you okay? She stared at him like he was a ghost, her eyes wide. Who? How did you? Your daughter sent me. Well, more accurately, I found her in a well about 5 miles east of here. She's safe. Logan saw the information hit Elena like a physical blow, relief so profound she nearly collapsed. I promised her I'd bring her mother back, and I keep my promises. Nora's alive? Elena's voice broke on her daughter's name. She's really alive. Very much so. Bossy as hell, too. Told me I needed a wife and she needed a dad. Seemed to think we could work something out. Logan allowed himself a thin smile, though his eyes never left Calvin. But first we need to resolve this situation. Calvin's expression had gone from confident to calculating. There's 3 of us, and 1 of you. And I'm the one with the rifle. See how math works out here? Shoot me, and my boys will gun you down before you can chamber another round. Maybe. Logan's voice was mild. But you'll still be dead. That's the part you need to focus on, Calvin. Your boys might get me. Probably will, but you'll be dead first, and Elena will be free. Is that really how you want this to end? The silence stretched. One of the other men, younger, nervous, licked his lips. Calvin, maybe we should... Shut up, Derek. Calvin didn't look away from Logan. You don't know who you're dealing with, Cowboy. I have resources. I have lawyers. I have connections. You put that rifle down and walk away, and maybe I don't come after you later for kidnapping my daughter. Nora's not at my place because I kidnapped her. She's there because I rescued her from dying alone in a well. Big difference. Logan shifted his weight slightly, ready for whatever came next. Here's what's going to happen. You and your friends are going to turn around and walk out of this mine. Elena's going to come with me, and you're going to go back to whatever hole you crawled out of and leave her alone. Or what? Or I shoot you. Logan said it simply, without heat or anger, statement of fact. I don't want to. I'm not a violent man by nature, but I will protect an innocent woman and child from a man who hurts them. It's not a difficult moral calculation. Calvin stared at him, trying to read him, trying to decide if he was bluffing. Logan let him look. Let him see the truth. That Logan Hale had nothing to lose, had already lost everything that mattered, and would pull that trigger without hesitation if it meant keeping his promise to a little girl. Whatever Calvin saw in Logan's eyes made his decision. Fine. He stepped back, hands raised in mock surrender. We'll go. But this isn't over, Cowboy. I know people. I'll find out who you are, where you live, and I'll come back for what's mine. You do that. Logan's voice was cold. But if you come near Elena or Nora again, I won't give you a warning. I'll just put you in the ground. We clear? Crystal. Calvin gestured to his companions. Come on, let's go. The 3 men filed past Logan, giving him wide berth. Calvin paused at the tunnel entrance, looking back at Elena with something ugly in his eyes. This isn't over, Elena. You know it's not. Then they were gone, their footsteps echoing away into the afternoon. Logan waited until the sound faded completely before he lowered his rifle and moved to Elena. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face. Not from pain, but from relief so overwhelming it couldn't be contained. "Nora's really safe?" she asked again, like she couldn't quite believe it. "Safe as houses." Logan crouched beside her, examining her ankle with gentle hands. "Probably spoiling my horse and eating me out of house and home by now. She's quite something, your daughter." "She is." Elena laughed, and it came out as half a sob. "She's everything." "Your ankle's in bad shape. Probably a severe sprain, maybe a fracture. Can you walk?" "I don't know. I don't think so." She tried to put weight on it and went white, biting back a cry. "Okay, plan B." Logan set his rifle aside and, without asking permission, picked Elena up. She was light, too light. Months on the run had carved the weight off her frame. "I'm going to carry you out of here. It's about 5 miles back to my place. You okay with that?" Elena stared up at him, the stranger who'd appeared out of nowhere to save her. "Why are you helping us?" "Because your daughter asked me to, and because—" Logan paused, then said simply, "because I couldn't save my own family. Maybe I can save yours." He carried Elena right out of that mine and into the sunlight, and with every step, the frozen thing in his chest continued its slow, painful thaw. The walk back took longer with Elena in his arms, but Logan kept a steady pace. She didn't speak much. Shock and exhaustion had set in, but occasionally she would murmur her daughter's name like a prayer. When they finally crested the last hill and saw the valley below, with Logan's ranch spread out like something from a simpler time, Elena gasped. "It's beautiful." "It's home." And maybe, Logan thought, looking down at the woman in his arms and thinking of the fierce little girl waiting for them, it could be home for more than just him. They descended toward the ranch as the sun began its slide toward evening, painting the Montana sky in shades of gold and red, and waiting in the barn doorway, small and determined and whole, was Nora, who started running the moment she saw them. "Mom! Mom!" Elena was crying again, and Logan set her down carefully so mother and daughter could collapse into each other's arms. He stood back and watched the reunion, feeling like an intruder on something sacred, until Nora looked up at him with those serious dark eyes and said, "I knew you'd keep your promise." "Always will," Logan said, and meant it. As twilight settled over the ranch and Logan helped Elena inside while Nora chattered about every detail of her adventure, something fundamental shifted in the universe. A man who'd been dead in all the ways that mattered began, slowly and painfully, to come back to life. And a family, broken and scattered and running, found, in the most unlikely place, something they'd almost stopped believing in. They found sanctuary. Part 2. A fragile hope. The ranch house was dark when they arrived, but Logan had left the porch light on, a habit from years of coming home late. Now it served as a beacon, warm and welcoming in the gathering dusk. He helped Elena up the steps while Nora darted ahead, already comfortable in this place that had become her refuge. "The couch pulls out into a bed," Logan said, guiding Elena through the door. "You'll sleep there tonight. Nora can take the guest room upstairs." Elena looked around the interior with wide eyes. The house was simple but well kept. Log walls, worn furniture that had clearly seen decades of use, photographs on the mantel that Logan quickly moved past. A bachelor's home, but clean and organized in a way that spoke of discipline rather than comfort. "I can't impose," Elena started, but Logan cut her off with a look. "You can barely walk. You've been running for months, and your daughter just survived falling in a well. You're not imposing. You're staying." He said it with finality, then softened his tone. "At least until you figure out what comes next." Nora appeared from the kitchen, a glass of water in her hands. "I found the cups," she announced proudly, "and there's food in the fridge. Real food, Mom, not just granola bars." Elena's face crumpled, and she pulled her daughter close. "Baby, I was so scared. When those men came, when I told you to run, I know, Mom, but I'm okay. Logan saved me." Nora looked at him with something close to worship. "He climbed down into the well and pulled me up, and then he let me ride his horse all by myself to get here." "You rode a horse by yourself?" Elena looked between them, incredulous. She's a natural, Logan said, moving to the kitchen. Ash didn't give her any trouble at all. Now, let's take a look at that ankle properly. He returned with a first aid kit and a basin of warm water. Elena had settled onto the couch, Nora curled against her side, both of them looking exhausted but safe. Logan knelt and carefully removed Elena's boot, noting her sharp intake of breath. The ankle was badly swollen, already turning deep purple. Logan probed it gently with experienced fingers, watching Elena's reactions. I don't think it's broken, he said finally, but it's a bad sprain. You need to keep it elevated and iced for the next few days. No walking on it. I don't have a few days, Elena said, tension returning to her voice. Calvin will come back. He always comes back. We need to leave before... You're not going anywhere on that ankle. Logan wrapped it carefully with an elastic bandage, his movements efficient. And even if you could walk, where would you go? How far do you think you'd get before he found you again? Elena's jaw tightened. So what do you suggest? We just wait here for him to show up? No. Logan sat back on his heels, meeting her eyes. I suggest you stop running and make a stand. Get the law involved properly. File restraining orders. Build a case. You think I haven't tried that? Elena's voice rose, raw with frustration. I had restraining orders in California. Fat lot of good they did. The police would come, Calvin would charm them, or his lawyer would make calls, and nothing would stick. He has money, Logan. Money and connections, and a really good lawyer who knows exactly how to work the system. Nora had gone very quiet, her small body tense against her mother's side. Logan noticed and kept his own voice calm. Montana's not California, and I know Sheriff Daniels personally. He's a good man, doesn't care about connections or money, just about what's right. And what if that's not enough? Elena's eyes shone with unshed tears. What if Calvin comes back before any of that matters? What if he takes Nora? He has parental rights, Logan. On paper, he's her father. He could take her, and legally, I couldn't stop him. The thought clearly terrified her more than any physical threat to herself. Logan understood that completely. Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance. Logan stood, his decision made. You'll stay here, both of you, for as long as it takes to sort this out properly. We can't. Yes, you can. I have the room. I have the resources. And he paused, then said what he'd been thinking since he'd pulled Nora from that well. I have reasons of my own for wanting to help. Elena studied him for a long moment, trying to read what those reasons might be. Her gaze drifted to the mantel, to the photographs Logan had turned face down. Who did you lose? She asked quietly. Nora looked up at him too, her dark eyes serious. She already knew part of the answer, but she wanted to hear it as well. Logan was silent for so long they probably thought he wouldn't answer. Then, slowly, he walked to the mantel and turned one of the frames right side up. A family photograph taken 4 years ago on a summer day that had been full of laughter and light. A woman with kind eyes and auburn hair smiling at the camera. A little girl, maybe 3 years old, grinning with her front teeth missing. And Logan, younger and whole, his arms around both of them. My wife, Jennifer. My daughter, Sarah. His voice was steady, but it cost him. Car accident 3 years ago. Drunk driver ran a red light. They died instantly. Nora slipped from the couch and came to stand beside him, looking at the photograph with the intensity of someone who understood loss. She was pretty, she said softly. Your daughter. She looks happy. She was. They both were. Logan set the frame down, but he left it facing out this time. After it happened, I stopped living. I kept breathing, kept working, but I wasn't really here, just going through motions. What changed? Elena asked. Logan looked at Nora, this fierce little girl who'd proposed marriage within an hour of meeting him. Someone reminded me that there are still people who need help, that maybe I'm not done yet. The moment stretched between them, heavy with understanding. Elena's expression softened, some of her defensive walls coming down. Thank you, she said, for everything, for finding Nora, for coming after me, for this, all of it. You're welcome. Now, Logan moved toward the kitchen again, needing to break the intensity. Let's figure out food. I'm betting neither of you has eaten properly in days. Weeks, Nora admitted cheerfully, following him. We've been eating a lot of canned beans. Logan opened his refrigerator and surveyed the contents. He wasn't much of a cook. Years alone had reduced his meals to functional rather than enjoyable, but he could manage something better than canned beans. How about eggs and toast? Maybe some bacon? Bacon? Nora said the word like it was a prayer. Real bacon? The realest. Logan pulled out the ingredients and got to work. Nora perched on a stool at the kitchen counter, watching his every move with rapt attention. From the living room, he could hear Elena shifting on the couch, probably trying to get comfortable with her injured ankle. Logan? Nora's voice was small. Are you mad that I said that thing? About you needing a wife and me needing a dad? He cracked eggs into a pan, considering his answer. No, I'm not mad. Surprised, maybe, but not mad. It's just, Mom tries really hard, but she's sad all the time and scared, and I thought if she had someone to help, someone strong like you, maybe she wouldn't have to be scared anymore. Nora swung her legs, not quite reaching the floor. And you seem really sad, too. So I thought maybe you could help each other. Logan flipped the bacon, the sizzle filling the quiet kitchen. It's not that simple, kiddo. People are complicated. You can't just decide to be a family because it makes sense on paper. Why not? Because... Logan paused, trying to find words a 6-year-old would understand. Because families are built on more than need. They're built on trust and time and... Love? Nora supplied helpfully. Yeah, love. But love can grow, can it? Mom says plants start as tiny seeds, but if you give them water and sun and time, they grow into something beautiful. Nora tilted her head, wise beyond her years. Maybe people can be like that too. Logan looked at this child who'd been through hell and somehow still believed in hope, in growth, in the possibility of beautiful things emerging from tiny seeds. Something in his chest, that frozen thing that had started to crack, shifted again. Maybe they can, he admitted. They ate together in the living room, Elena on the couch with her ankle elevated, Nora sitting cross-legged on the floor, and Logan in his worn armchair. It was the first real meal any of them had enjoyed in far too long, and they ate in comfortable silence, just savoring the normalcy of it. Afterward, Logan showed Nora to the guest room upstairs. It had been his daughter's room once. He'd closed the door 3 years ago and hadn't opened it since. But when he turned the knob and flipped on the light, he found it exactly as Sarah had left it. Pink curtains, a bookshelf full of stories, stuffed animals on the bed. Nora walked in slowly, touching things gently, like they were sacred. This was your daughter's room? Yes. Do you mind if I sleep here? Logan's throat was tight. No, I think she would have liked you. I would have liked her too. Nora climbed onto the bed, small in the space meant for someone only slightly larger. Can I look at her books? Of course. Stay up as long as you want. Logan turned to go, then paused. Nora? Thank you. For what? For being brave today, for trusting me, for... He gestured vaguely, encompassing everything. All of it. Nora smiled, that luminous smile that seemed to light up the room. You're welcome. Good night, Logan. Good night, sweetheart. He descended the stairs slowly. Those 2 words, sweetheart, something he'd called Sarah 1,000 times, ringing in his ears. When he reached the living room, Elena was wiping tears from her eyes. I heard, she said softly, about the room. That must have been hard. Logan shrugged, uncomfortable with the emotion. It needed to be opened eventually, might as well be for someone who'll appreciate it. Elena shifted, wincing as she adjusted her ankle. Logan, I need you to understand something. I'm grateful, more grateful than I can say, but we can't stay here long. It's not safe for any of us. Calvin meant what he said. He'll find out who you are, and he'll come. Let him come. You don't know what you're saying. He's dangerous, Logan. Really dangerous. He put me in the hospital twice before I finally got the courage to leave. Her voice broke. He hurt Nora once. Just once. Grabbed her arm so hard it left bruises. That's when I knew I had to run. That's when I knew he'd eventually kill one of us, or both. Logan settled into his chair, his expression hard. Then it's good that I don't scare easy. This isn't a joke. I'm not joking. Elena, listen to me. You've been running for months. How's that working out for you? The words were blunt but not cruel. You're exhausted, hurt, terrified. Your daughter's growing up thinking that fear is normal, that running is the only option. That's not sustainable. Eventually you'll run out of money or luck or strength, and he'll catch you. And next time there might not be anyone around to help. Elena stared at him, her expression a mixture of hope and fear. So what's your solution? We make a stand here. Hope the law protects us? We make a stand, yes, but we don't just hope. We prepare. Logan leaned forward, his voice steady and certain. I know these hills like the back of my hand. I know the people in town. I know how to protect what's mine. And right now, whether you like it or not, you and Nora are under my protection. We're not yours to protect. Maybe not legally, but morally, ethically. You became my responsibility the moment I pulled your daughter out of that well, and she looked at me with those big eyes and asked me to save her mother. Logan held Elena's gaze. I don't make promises lightly, Elena. When I say I'll keep you safe, I mean it. Why? The question burst from her, raw and desperate. Why would you do this for strangers? Why would you risk yourself for people you just met? Logan was quiet for a long moment, and when he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 years of grief and guilt and slowly dawning redemption. Because I couldn't save Jennifer and Sarah. I wasn't there when they needed me. I was at the ranch, working on fence line, miles away when that drunk driver ran the red light. By the time I got to the hospital, they were already gone. He swallowed hard. I've spent 3 years wishing I could go back, wishing I'd been there, wishing I could have done something. I can't change the past, but maybe I can change your future. Elena's tears spilled over. That's not your burden to carry. Maybe not, but I'm carrying it anyway. Logan stood, needing to move. Look, you don't have to decide anything tonight. Sleep on it. Tomorrow, we'll call Sheriff Daniels, get the ball rolling on proper protection. We'll do this right, legal and smart. But please, don't run, not yet. Give this a chance. Elena wiped her eyes, then nodded slowly. Okay, one day at a time. We'll try it your way. That's all I'm asking. Logan gathered the dishes from dinner, needing something to do with his hands. Bathrooms down the hall, towels in the linen closet. If you need anything during the night, my room is upstairs at the end of the hall. Don't hesitate. Logan? He paused at the kitchen doorway. Yeah? Thank you. For seeing us, for caring, for... Her voice wavered. For being the kind of man I thought didn't exist anymore. Logan didn't know how to respond to that, so he just nodded and retreated to the kitchen, leaving Elena to her thoughts and her tears and the unfamiliar sensation of safety. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Elena's ankle kept her mostly immobile, but she insisted on helping where she could, folding laundry one-handed, directing Nora and setting the table, offering to help with meals. Logan refused most of it, telling her to rest, but he secretly appreciated the signs of life returning to his home. Nora, meanwhile, attached herself to Logan like a shadow. She followed him to the barn in the mornings, chattering constantly about everything and nothing. She helped feed the horses, Logan had 3 others besides Ash, and learned to fill water buckets and measure out grain. She asked 1,000 questions about ranch life, about Montana, about everything she saw. Why don't you have any chickens? She asked on the 3rd morning, standing in the barn doorway while Logan mucked out stalls. Used to. Got rid of them after... He paused. After it was just me. Didn't see the point. We should get chickens. Fresh eggs are better than store eggs. Mom says so. Logan leaned on his pitchfork, looking at this tiny girl making plans for his ranch. We, huh? Well, yeah. If we're going to stay, we should have chickens. And maybe a garden. Mom's really good at gardens. She can grow anything. Nora's face fell slightly. She hasn't been able to, though, since we've been running. You need to stay in one place for a garden. The longing in her voice for permanence, for normal things like chickens and gardens, hit Logan hard. This child should be worried about homework and playground games, not running from her father and living out of a tent. Tell you what, Logan said, making a decision that would have surprised him a week ago. If you're still here in spring, we'll talk about chickens in a garden. Deal? Nora's face lit up like sunrise. Really? Really? But that means your mom has to agree to stay that long. Think you can convince her? I'll try. Nora bounced on her toes, already planning. She needs convincing about a lot of things, but I'm very persuasive. I noticed. Logan returned to his work, hiding a smile. Now, you want to learn how to properly brush a horse, or are you just going to stand there plotting? Both. I can multitask. True to his word, Logan called Sheriff Daniels that afternoon. The sheriff was a man in his 50s, weathered and no-nonsense, with eyes that didn't miss much. He arrived at the ranch within an hour of the call, his cruiser kicking up dust on the long driveway. Logan met him on the porch, shaking hands firmly. Thanks for coming, Jim. Logan, the sheriff nodded, then glanced past him to where Elena sat on the couch, visible through the screen door. Got a situation? You could say that. Logan explained the basics, the rescue, the pursuit, Calvin Wright, and his threats. He kept it factual, but the sheriff read between the lines. You're harboring a woman and child fleeing domestic violence, Jim said when Logan finished, and the husband's made threats. You know what you're getting into? I know. Jim studied him for a long moment. Haven't seen you take interest in much of anything for 3 years, Logan. Now suddenly you're playing protector to strangers? They're not strangers anymore. Logan's voice was firm. And they need help. Proper legal help. Can you provide that? The sheriff was quiet, thinking. Then he nodded. Let me talk to the woman. Get her statement. Then we'll see what we can do. Elena was nervous talking to the sheriff, her hands twisting in her lap as she recounted months of abuse, of running, of fear. Nora stayed upstairs during the conversation, but Logan could hear her moving around in Sarah's room, probably listening through the floorboards. Jim took notes, asked careful questions, and didn't judge. When Elena finished, he sat back inside. Mrs. Wright. Ms. Wright. The divorce was finalized 2 months ago. Ms. Wright, I'm going to be straight with you. Montana can issue a protection order, but enforcement is tricky with someone who has resources and doesn't respect the law. The fact that he tracked you here, assaulted you, and made threats, that's all good for the case, but it might not be enough, Elena finished, her voice hollow. It might not be fast enough, Jim corrected gently. The wheels of justice turn slow. In the meantime, you need to be smart. Stay somewhere safe. Don't go anywhere alone. Document everything. He glanced at Logan. You planning to let them stay here? For as long as they need. And you understand that if Calvin Wright comes back, things could get ugly? I understand. I'm prepared. Jim's expression was skeptical. Prepared how? Logan, you're a good man, but you're not a fighter. This isn't some barroom brawl. This is a man who's already proven he's dangerous. I can handle myself. Can you? The sheriff's voice was sharp. Because last time someone you cared about was in danger, you weren't there. You willing to go through that again? The words landed like a physical blow. Logan's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the old grief threatened to swallow him whole. But then he felt a small hand slip into his. Nora, who'd come downstairs without anyone noticing, standing beside him in silent support. I'm here now, Shay, Logan said quietly, and I'm not going anywhere. Jim looked at them. Logan and the little girl holding his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world, and something in his expression softened. All right, I'll file the paperwork, put out alerts. If Calvin Wright sets foot in this county, I'll know about it. But Logan, you need to be smart about this. Install security, maybe get a dog. And for the love of everything, call me at the first sign of trouble. Don't try to be a hero. Not trying to be a hero, just trying to do what's right. After the sheriff left, Elena was quiet, staring at her hands. Nora had gone back upstairs, sensing the adults needed to talk. Logan sat across from Elena, waiting. You shouldn't have said that, Elena finally said. About being here for as long as we need. Jim's right. This could get dangerous. Calvin won't just give up. I know that. You don't, though. You don't know him like I do. She searched for words. He's obsessive, controlling. In his mind, Nora and I belong to him. He won't stop until he gets us back or until someone stops him, Logan finished, which is exactly what I plan to do if it comes to that. By doing what? Shooting him? Elena's voice rose. That's murder, Logan. That's prison. You'd throw your life away for us? Better than standing by and doing nothing. But why? Elena stood, forgetting her ankle in her agitation. She immediately stumbled, and Logan was there, steadying her, his hands firm on her arms. They were close suddenly, closer than they'd been since he'd carried her from the mine. Because you deserve to be safe, Logan said quietly. Because Nora deserves to grow up without fear. Because, he hesitated, then pushed forward. Because, for the first time in 3 years, I feel like I have a purpose again. Like maybe I'm not just marking time until I die. Don't ask me to give that up, please. Elena stared up at him, and in her eyes he saw fear and hope warring with each other. What if you get hurt? What if something happens to you because of us? Then it happens. But at least I'll have tried. That's not reassuring, Logan. It's honest. He helped her back to the couch, making sure her ankle was elevated again. Elena, I can't promise everything will work out perfectly. I can't guarantee Calvin won't come back or that the law will protect you fast enough. But I can promise that while you're under my roof, I'll do everything in my power to keep you and Nora safe. That's all I've got. Elena was crying again, silently, tears tracking down her cheeks. I'm so tired of being scared. I'm so tired of running. Her voice broke. I just want my daughter to have a normal life, to go to school and make friends and not flinch when someone raises their voice. Then stay. Give this a chance. Let me help. What do you get out of this? Really? Logan thought about that, about Nora's hand in his, about the house that felt less empty with their voices filling it, about waking up with purpose instead of just obligation. A reason to keep going, he said simply. Elena nodded slowly, wiping her eyes. Okay, we'll stay, at least for now. But Logan, if Calvin comes, if things get dangerous, you promise me you'll get Nora out first. Before anything else. Promise me. I promise. The week that followed was the strangest of Logan's life. Slowly, the house transformed. Elena, still limited by her ankle, directed operations from the couch. Nora became Logan's constant helper, her energy boundless. They cleaned rooms that had been closed for years, opened curtains that had stayed drawn, brought light back into spaces that had been dark for too long. Logan found himself laughing at Nora's observations, smiling at Elena's dry humor, feeling the cold emptiness that had defined his existence, slowly filling with something that felt dangerously close to hope. He taught Nora to ride properly, watching from the ground as she circled the corral on Ash, her face radiant with joy. He fixed the porch swing that had been broken since the accident and found Elena sitting there in the evenings, watching the sunset with an expression of peace he suspected she hadn't worn in years. They became a strange little unit, not quite a family, but not separate either. Something in between, something fragile and new and terrifying in its potential. But underneath the normalcy, the threat lingered. Logan installed motion sensors around the property, positioned security cameras at key points, and made sure his rifle was always within reach. He slept lightly, waking at every unusual sound, constantly vigilant. And he waited, because men like Calvin Wright didn't give up. They didn't accept defeat. And Logan knew, with the certainty of someone who'd seen darkness in human nature, that the confrontation wasn't over. It was just postponed. The peace lasted exactly 12 days. Logan was in the barn when it happened, showing Nora how to properly clean a saddle. Elena's ankle had healed enough for her to move around with a cane, and she'd insisted on going into town with them that morning for supplies. It was her first venture beyond the ranch since the mine, and Logan had watched her face as they'd driven through the small downtown, the mixture of fear and determination, the way her eyes tracked every vehicle, every stranger. But nothing had happened. They'd shopped at the general store, stopped by the diner for lunch, and returned home without incident. For a few hours, it had felt almost normal. Like this? Nora held up the saddle soap, applying it in careful circles the way Logan had shown her. Perfect. You're a natural at this. Logan watched her work, feeling that now familiar warmth in his chest. In less than 2 weeks, this child had worked her way so deeply into his life that he couldn't imagine the ranch without her, the sound of her laughter, her endless questions, her absolute certainty that everything would work out. It had become essential. "Logan?" Elena's voice called from the house, sharp with an edge he didn't like. "Can you come here?" He was moving before he'd consciously decided to, instinct taking over. "Stay here," he told Nora, already halfway to the barn door. "But stay. Here." His tone left no room for argument. Logan crossed the yard in long strides, his hand automatically checking the pistol he'd started wearing at his hip. Elena was standing at the kitchen window, her face pale, staring at something on the road beyond the property line. "What is it?" "A car. Black SUV. It's been sitting there for 10 minutes, just watching the house." Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "It's him, Logan. I know it is." Logan moved to the window, staying to the side where he wouldn't be easily visible. Sure enough, a black Escalade sat on the road about 200 yards from the ranch entrance. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see inside, but the vehicle's presence was deliberate, threatening. "Could be anyone," Logan said, but he didn't believe it. "It's him." Elena's certainty was absolute. "He wants me to know he found us, wants me to be scared." "Is it working?" She looked at him with dark eyes that held too much experience with fear. "Terrified, but I'm not running this time." "No, you're not." Logan pulled out his phone and dialed Sheriff Daniels. "Jim?" "Got a situation at the ranch." "Black Escalade, been sitting on the road watching the house for about 10 minutes. "Yeah." "Yeah, I think so." "All right, we'll wait." He hung up and turned to Elena. "Sheriff's on his way. Should be here in 15 minutes. In the meantime, we sit tight." "What about Nora?" "She's in the barn. Safe." Logan moved toward the door. "I'm going to get her, bring her inside. You lock the doors behind us. Don't open them for anyone but me or Jim. Understand?" Elena nodded, her jaw set. Logan noticed she'd picked up the heavy cast-iron skillet from the stove. Not much of a weapon, but something. It spoke to her courage that even terrified, she was preparing to fight. Logan crossed the yard again, forcing himself to move normally despite every instinct screaming to run. He wouldn't give Calvin Wright, if it was him, the satisfaction of seeing fear. "Nora, time to head inside." She looked up from the saddle, reading something in his expression. "Is something wrong?" "Just being cautious. Come on." He held out his hand and she took it without question, trusting him completely. That trust was humbling and terrifying in equal measure. They made it back to the house without incident. The Escalade hadn't moved, hadn't done anything except sit there like a patient predator. Logan locked the door behind them, checked the other entrances, and positioned himself where he could watch the road. "What's happening?" Nora asked, looking between the adults. Elena pulled her daughter close. "Nothing, baby. Just someone stopped on the road. Probably lost." "You're lying." Nora's voice was matter-of-fact. "You get that look when you lie. Your eyes get tight at the corners." She turned to Logan. "Is it my dad?" Logan had promised himself he'd never lie to this child. "Maybe. We're not sure. But Sheriff Daniels is coming, and we're staying inside until we know it's safe, okay?" "Okay." Nora pressed closer to her mother. Her earlier cheer evaporated. "Is he going to take us away?" "No." Logan said it with absolute certainty. "That's not going to happen." The 15 minutes until the sheriff arrived felt like hours. The Escalade didn't move, didn't leave, just sat there, a dark presence that radiated menace. Logan kept one hand on his pistol and his eyes on the road, while Elena held Nora and murmured reassurances that fooled neither of them. Finally, Sheriff Daniels' cruiser appeared, lights off but moving with purpose. The cruiser pulled up beside the Escalade, and Logan watched through binoculars as Jim got out and approached the vehicle. The driver's window rolled down, but Logan couldn't see who was inside. The conversation lasted maybe 2 minutes. Then the Escalade's engine started and it pulled away, heading back toward town. Jim watched it go, wrote something in his notepad, then drove up to the ranch. Logan met him on the porch. "Well?" "Calvin Wright. He made sure I knew it too." Jim's expression was grim. Said he was just sitting on a public road, exercising his right to be there. Technically, he's correct. He's not on your property. He's not making direct threats. There's nothing I can charge him with. He's stalking them. I know that. You know that. But proving it legally is different. I documented it, took his plate number, made it clear he's being watched. But Logan, Jim lowered his voice. This is just the beginning. He's testing boundaries, seeing what he can get away with. It's going to escalate. Let it. Logan's voice was hard. The moment he steps onto my property, he's trespassing. That changes things. It does. But be smart about how you handle it. A man's allowed to defend his property, but the law has limits. Don't cross them. Jim glanced past him to where Elena stood in the doorway. Ma'am, I know this is frightening. We're doing everything we can within the legal system, but I need you to be prepared for the possibility that legal channels might not move fast enough. Elena's laugh was bitter. I've been prepared for that since the day I left him. Why do you think I ran instead of trusting the courts? Jim nodded, understanding. Then you know what you're up against. My advice? Document everything. Every time he shows up, every call, every contact, write it down. Build a case. And in the meantime, he looked at Logan. Stay alert. After the sheriff left, the house felt different. The fragile peace they'd built over 12 days was shattered, replaced by tension that sat heavy in the air. Nora was quiet, clinging to her mother in a way she hadn't since that first night. Elena's hands never stopped shaking, though she tried to hide it. Logan made dinner, but no one was hungry. They pushed food around their plates, jumping at every sound from outside. When full dark fell, Logan checked and rechecked every lock, every window, every point of entry. You should both sleep upstairs tonight, he said, loading his rifle. Nora and Sarah's room like usual, but Elena, you take my room. It has a better view of the approach road. Where will you sleep? I won't. Logan settled into his armchair with the rifle across his lap. Not tonight, anyway. Well, Logan, you can't stay awake all night. Watch me. His voice was gentle but implacable. Elena, I need you rested and able to move if something happens. That means actual sleep in a real bed. Please. She wanted to argue. He could see it in her eyes. But exhaustion and fear won out. All right, but if anything happens, you'll be the first to know. He listened to them move upstairs, the soft murmur of Elena tucking Nora into bed, the creak of floorboards as she made her way to his room. Then silence, broken only by the normal sounds of night, wind through the pines, the distant call of an owl, ash nickering softly in the barn. Logan sat in the dark and waited. Nothing happened that night or the next day. But the morning after, when Logan went to feed the horses, he found something that made his blood run cold. A photograph tacked to the barn door. Elena and Nora, taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. They were in town, from their shopping trip. Elena was smiling at something Nora had said, her guard down for just a moment. Someone had drawn a red X over both their faces. Logan tore the photo down, fury burning through him. Calvin Wright had been here, on his property, close enough to walk to the barn and leave this threat. While Logan had been inside, probably sleeping in that chair at dawn, Wright had been out here violating their sanctuary. He took the photo to the house where Elena was making breakfast. She went white when she saw it. He was here, on the property. Her voice was barely a whisper. Last night, probably, or early this morning, Logan was already on the phone to Jim. Sheriff? He escalated. Found a photograph on my barn door. Yeah, we're pressing charges. Criminal trespass, stalking, terroristic threatening. I want him arrested. But when Jim arrived and examined the photo, his expression was regretful. Logan, I want to help, but look at this objectively. There's no proof Calvin Wright put this here. No fingerprints, no witnesses, nothing tying him to it directly. Who else would it be? I believe you. But belief isn't evidence. Any lawyer worth his fee would create reasonable doubt. Could have been one of his associates. Could have been someone else entirely. Without concrete proof, then what good are you? Logan's patience snapped. A man terrorizes a woman and child, stalks them across state lines, trespasses on my property to leave death threats, and you're telling me there's nothing you can do? I'm telling you the system has limitations. I've documented everything. I'm building a case, but these things take time. We might not have time. I know. Jim's voice was heavy with frustration. I know, Logan, and I'm sorry. But if you take matters into your own hands, if you hurt this man outside the boundaries of self-defense, you'll be the one in handcuffs. Is that what you want? To leave these two alone and unprotected while you sit in a cell? Logan forced himself to breathe, to think past the rage. No. Then let me do my job, and you do yours. Keep them safe, document everything, and the moment Wright steps over the line in a way we can prove, I'll have him in custody so fast his head will spin. After Jim left, Logan sat with Elena at the kitchen table, the threatening photo between them. Nora was upstairs, deliberately kept away from this ugliness. I'm sorry, Elena said quietly. This is my fault. I brought this danger to your door. Stop that! Logan's voice was sharp. You're a victim, not the villain. Wright made his choices. You're just trying to survive them. But you're caught in the middle now, you and your home and… Her voice broke. And if something happens to you because of us, I'll never forgive myself. Logan reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time he'd initiated touch since carrying her from the mine, and he felt her startle at the contact, but she didn't pull away. Nothing's going to happen to me, or to you, or to Nora. I'm not letting Calvin Wright destroy anything else in this world. He squeezed her hand gently. We're going to get through this. Together. Elena looked at their joined hands, then up at his face. Why are you really doing this, Logan? And don't give me that line about purpose or redemption. There's something more, isn't there? He was quiet for a long moment, debating how much truth to share. Then he decided she deserved honesty. When Jennifer and Sarah died, I wanted to die too. For months, I hoped I would. Just go to sleep and not wake up. But I kept breathing anyway, kept going through motions because stopping felt like too much effort. Logan stared at their hands, hers small and calloused and his larger, scarred one. Then Nora called out from that well, and when I pulled her up, when she looked at me and said I needed a wife and she needed a dad, something woke up inside me, something I thought was dead. What? The ability to care about tomorrow, to think past just getting through today, to believe that maybe there's still good I can do in this world. He met her eyes. You and Nora gave me that. So no, this isn't just about redemption or purpose. It's about… He searched for the right words. It's about choosing life instead of just existing. You helped me do that, so I'm helping you stay alive to make that choice too. Elena's eyes filled with tears. That's the most terrifying and beautiful thing anyone's ever said to me. Terrifying how? Because I'm starting to… She stopped, shook her head. It doesn't matter. We can't afford this. Can't afford to feel things or hope for things or imagine futures that probably don't exist. Why not? Because hope hurts when it's taken away, and Calvin always takes everything away. Logan stood still holding her hand and gently pulled her up beside him. They stood close in the kitchen, the morning sun streaming through windows that had been dark for 3 years, and he saw her clearly, not as a victim or a refugee or a problem to solve, but as a woman, brave and scarred and beautiful in her brokenness. Then let's make sure he doesn't take this away too, Logan said softly. Before either of them could say more, Nora's voice called from upstairs. Mom, can I come down now? The spell broke. Elena stepped back, wiping her eyes, and called back, Yes, baby, come down. Nora thundered down the stairs with the energy of someone who'd been cooped up too long. She stopped at the bottom, looking at the adults with far too knowing eyes for a 6-year-old. Were you guys having a moment? What? Elena's face flushed. No, we were just talking about… It looked like a moment, like in the movies, right before people kiss. Nora said this with complete seriousness. You should probably kiss. I think it would make you both feel better. Nora! Elena was mortified, but Logan found himself fighting a smile. Kid has a point, he said, then immediately regretted it when Elena shot him a look that could have melted steel. Or not. Probably not. Definitely not. How about breakfast? But the moment, however awkward and interrupted, shifted something between them. For the rest of the day, Logan caught Elena watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Not fear, not gratitude, but something deeper and more complicated. something that made his carefully rebuilt walls feel suddenly very fragile. 3 days passed. The Escalade appeared twice more on the road, sitting and watching, never quite crossing the line into actionable offense. Each time, Jim came and documented it, and each time, Calvin Wright drove away smirking. The tension was unbearable. Elena barely slept. Logan never slept. Nora tried to maintain her usual cheer, but it was forced, fragile. They were all waiting for the other shoe to drop. It dropped on Saturday morning, in town. Elena had insisted on going to the grocery store. Cabin fever had set in, and she needed to feel like a normal person again, even briefly. Logan had argued against it, but she'd been adamant. So he'd accompanied them, staying close, hyper-vigilant to every person, every vehicle. They'd been in the store for maybe 10 minutes when Logan heard Nora's voice, high and frightened. "Mom!" He turned to see Calvin Wright standing at the end of the aisle, blocking the exit. He was a big man, well-dressed, with the kind of smile that made Logan's fists clench. Behind him were two other men, probably the same ones from the mine. "Elena." Calvin's voice was smooth, reasonable. "We need to talk." "Get away from us." Elena positioned herself in front of Nora, her entire body tense. "You have a restraining order. You're not supposed to be within 500 feet. This is a public store. I have as much right to shop here as you do." Calvin's smile widened. "And look, there's my daughter." "Hi, Nora. Did you miss Daddy?" "No." Nora's voice was small but defiant. "Go away." "That's not very nice. Mommy's been teaching you bad manners." Calvin took a step forward, and Logan moved to intercept him. "That's far enough." Calvin's eyes slid to Logan, assessing and dismissive. "The cowboy. We meet again. You know you're harboring my family, right? That could be considered kidnapping." "They're staying with me by choice. That's called hospitality." "Is it? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're interfering in a domestic matter. Playing hero to a woman who's probably told you all sorts of lies about me." Calvin's voice dropped, became conspiratorial. "She does that, you know. Lies, manipulates, makes herself out to be the victim when really she's just unstable. Running from place to place, dragging my daughter through hell, refusing to let me be a father." "I've seen her injuries," Logan said flatly. "Seen the fear in her eyes, seen the way her daughter flinches at raised voices. Don't stand there and gaslight me about who the victim is." Calvin's expression hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about. Elena, this is your last chance. Come home. Bring Nora. We'll forget all this unpleasantness. Be a family again." "We were never a family. We were hostages." Elena's voice was steady despite her fear. "And I'd rather die than go back." "That can be arranged." Calvin said it quietly, and Logan saw the flash of pure rage beneath the civilized veneer. This man was dangerous, not just violent, but unhinged in his obsession. "Are you threatening her?" Logan asked, his voice carrying deliberately. Several other shoppers had stopped, were watching the confrontation. "In front of witnesses? In a public place?" Calvin seemed to realize he'd made a mistake. His expression smoothed back to false pleasantness. "Of course not. I'm just trying to have a conversation with my ex-wife about our daughter's welfare. Is that a crime?" "Violating a restraining order is." "I'm not violating anything. I'm shopping. If she happens to be in the same store, that's coincidence." "Bullshit." Logan pulled out his phone. "Sheriff Daniels?" "Logan Hale. Calvin Wright is at Morrison's General Store, confronting Elena and Nora in violation of the restraining order." "Yeah, we're here now." No physical contact yet." "All right." He hung up and looked at Calvin. "Sheriff's 2 minutes away. You want to stay and explain your coincidence, or would you rather leave?" Calvin's jaw tightened, but he stepped back. "This isn't over, Elena. You can't hide forever. Sooner or later, we're going to have a real conversation. Just the three of us. Like a family should." The threat was unmistakable. He turned and walked toward the exit, his two companions following. But at the door, he paused and looked back. "Nice ranch you have, Cowboy. Real pretty. Be a shame if something happened to it." Then he was gone, leaving Logan with a fury so intense it took every ounce of control not to follow and drag the man back by his collar. Elena collapsed against the nearest shelf, shaking violently. Nora wrapped her arms around her mother's waist, tears streaming down her face. Other shoppers were staring, whispering. Logan wanted to shield them from the attention, from the public exposure of their private terror. "Come on," he said gently, touching Elena's shoulder. "Let's go home." They abandoned their groceries and left, Elena leaning on Logan while Nora pressed close to both of them. By the time they reached the truck, Sheriff Daniels was pulling into the parking lot. Logan gave him a quick rundown while Elena sat in the passenger seat, staring at nothing. "Did he threaten you directly? Use specific words?" Jim asked, taking notes. "Not directly enough for charges, but he made it clear he wasn't done. Threatened the ranch too." Logan's voice was tight with suppressed rage. "How much more does he have to do before you can act?" "I'm acting, Logan. I've got a bolo out on him. Every deputy in the county is watching for that Escalade. The moment he steps definitively over the line, he did step over the line. He confronted a woman with a restraining order in front of witnesses. In a public place where he claims he had legitimate reason to be, his lawyer will argue it was accidental encounter. You know how this works." Jim's frustration matched Logan's. "I want to help, but I can't arrest a man on assumptions and implications." Logan looked at his truck, at Elena's pale face and Nora's tears, and made a decision. "Then I'm done waiting for the law to work. From now on, we do this my way." "Logan, I'm not going to do anything illegal, but I'm not going to be passive either. He wants to play games? Fine, but he's playing on my territory now." Jim started to argue, then seemed to see something in Logan's expression that made him stop. "Just don't do anything that'll make me have to arrest you. These two need you free and able to protect them." "I know. Trust me, Jim. I know exactly what I'm doing." The ride back to the ranch was silent, except for Nora's occasional sniffles. When they pulled up to the house, Logan saw it immediately. All 4 tires on Elena's old sedan, parked near the barn, were slashed. Another message. Another escalation. "That son of a—" Logan caught himself before finishing the curse in front of Nora. "Stay in the truck. Both of you. Let me check the property." He moved through the ranch systematically, rifle in hand, checking every building, every corner where someone could hide. The barn was clear. The house was clear. But the tires were definitely slashed, and near them another photograph, this time of Logan himself, taken through his kitchen window. A red X marked his chest. Calvin Wright had declared open war. When Logan returned to the truck, Elena took one look at his face and knew. He was here again. "Yeah." "What did he do?" "Slashed your tires, left another photo." Logan's voice was hard, controlled. "Elena, I need you to listen carefully. This ends one of 2 ways. Either Calvin Wright backs down, or he comes at us directly." "I don't think he's backing down." "Neither do I." Her voice was hollow. "So what do we do?" Logan looked at her, at Nora, at this fragile family he'd somehow become responsible for, and he thought about Jennifer and Sarah, about not being there when they needed him, about promises to the living mattering more than grief for the dead. "We prepare for war," he said simply, "and we make damn sure we win." That night, Logan didn't sleep at all. He sat in the living room with every light in the house off, watching the approach road through night vision binoculars he'd pulled from storage. The ranch was silent, except for the occasional creak of settling wood and the distant howl of coyotes in the hills. Elena came down around midnight, moving carefully in the darkness. She'd been upstairs with Nora, probably lying awake just like him, staring at the ceiling and waiting for something terrible to happen. "Can't sleep?" Logan asked quietly, not turning from the window. "Haven't really slept in 6 months. Why start now?" She settled onto the couch near his chair, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. "What are you looking for out there?" "Movement, headlights, anything that doesn't belong." Logan lowered the binoculars and finally looked at her. In the faint moonlight filtering through the windows, her face was pale and drawn. "You should try to rest. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "What's tomorrow?" "The day we turn this place into a fortress." Logan's voice was matter-of-fact. "I've been too passive, too willing to wait for the law to handle things. That ends now." Elena pulled the blanket tighter. "What are you planning?" "Nothing illegal, just making it very, very difficult for anyone to get near this house without me knowing about it." He gestured toward the darkness outside. "This ranch has advantages: remote location, limited access points, terrain I know better than anyone. I'm going to use all of that." You sound like you're preparing for a siege. I am. Logan met her eyes directly. Elena, I need you to understand something. Calvin Wright isn't going to stop. The law can't protect you fast enough, so I'm going to protect you the only way I know how, by making this place impregnable and making it very clear that attacking us comes with consequences. What kind of consequences? The kind that make a man think twice about his choices. Logan's voice was hard. I won't start violence, but if he brings it to my door, I'll finish it. And I need to know you're okay with that. Elena was quiet for a long time, processing what he was really saying. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. I've tried running, I've tried hiding, I've tried trusting the system. None of it worked. So, yes, Logan, I'm okay with whatever you need to do to keep us safe. All of it. Even if it means I might have to hurt someone, maybe kill someone. Even then. She said it without hesitation. Calvin made his choices. He chose to be violent. He chose to hunt us. He chose to threaten you. Whatever happens now is on him, not you. Logan nodded slowly, some tension he'd been carrying easing at her words. He'd needed to know she understood, that she wouldn't blame him for what might be necessary. There's something else we need to talk about, Elena continued, her voice dropping lower. If something happens to me, if Calvin gets past your defenses, if something goes wrong, I need to know Nora will be safe. Nothing's going to happen to you. But if it does, Elena leaned forward, intense. Logan, I need you to promise me something. If I don't make it through this, you'll take care of her. Not just keep her safe until she can be placed with social services, but actually take care of her. Raise her. Give her the life she deserves. Elena, please, I know it's a huge thing to ask. I know you barely know us, but she loves you, Logan. In just 2 weeks, you've become the father figure she's never had. She feels safe with you. And I can't, her voice broke. I can't stand the thought of her ending up in foster care or worse, with Calvin getting custody because there's no one else. Promise me. Logan looked at this woman who'd been through hell and was still fighting, still protecting her daughter even while planning for the worst. He thought about Nora's hand in his, her absolute trust, the way she'd brought light back into his dead house. I promise, he said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. If anything happens to you, which it won't, Nora will have a home here. Always. Elena's tears spilled over. Thank you for everything, for being the kind of man who keeps promises, for seeing us as people worth protecting, for, she struggled with the words, for making me believe that maybe not all men are like Calvin. Most men aren't like Calvin. Most men don't hurt the people they're supposed to protect. I know that intellectually, but knowing and believing are different things. She wiped her eyes. Being here, watching you with Nora, seeing how gentle you are despite your size and strength, it's teaching me that maybe I can trust again. Maybe not all of this is hopeless. Logan wanted to go to her, to offer comfort, but he kept his position by the window. They couldn't afford distraction, couldn't afford to let their guard down even for a moment. You should go back upstairs, he said gently. Try to sleep. I'll keep watch. Will you wake me if anything happens? You'll be the first to know. Elena stood but paused on her way to the stairs. Logan, that thing Nora said about you needing a wife and her needing a dad? Yeah, she wasn't entirely wrong. Elena said it quickly, like ripping off a bandage, then hurried upstairs before he could respond. Logan sat in the darkness, those words echoing in his mind, and for the first time in 3 years felt something other than grief when he thought about the future. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Dawn broke cold and clear, painting the Montana sky in shades of pink and gold. Logan had made it through the night without incident, though his body ached from hours of stillness and his eyes burned from lack of sleep. He made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, then went to work. First, he walked the entire perimeter of his property, identifying every possible approach route. The ranch sat in a valley with hills on 3 sides and the access road on the 4th. There were game trails through the hills, dry creek beds that could serve as cover, rock formations that could hide a man. Logan marked each one mentally, planning. When he returned to the house, Nora was up and eating cereal at the kitchen table. She looked at him with worried eyes. You look tired. I am tired, but I'm okay. Logan poured himself more coffee. How'd you sleep? Not good. I had bad dreams about Dad. Nora pushed her cereal around the bowl. Logan, are we going to be okay? He sat down across from her, meeting her serious gaze with honesty. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure you are. But Nora, I need you to understand something. The next few days might be scary. There might be loud noises or things that frighten you. If that happens, I need you to trust me and do exactly what your mom or I tell you. Can you do that? I can be brave. I know you can. You've already proven that. Logan reached across and squeezed her small hand. But being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway. You understand? Like when I was in the well, I was really scared, but I held on to the rope anyway. Exactly like that. Logan smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. You're tougher than you know, kid. After breakfast, Logan got to work in earnest. He drove into town and bought supplies, motion sensor lights, additional security cameras, tripwire, flares. The clerk at the hardware store raised his eyebrows at the quantity, but didn't ask questions. News of the confrontation at the grocery store had already spread through the small town, as news always did in places like this. Back at the ranch, Logan spent the day installing defenses, motion lights at every corner of the property, cameras covering all approaches, tripwires strung across the game trails, not to hurt anyone but to alert him if they were crossed. He positioned emergency supplies at strategic points, water, first aid kits, extra ammunition. He cleared sight lines and identified fallback positions. Elena watched him work, understanding what each preparation meant. You really think he'll come? I know he'll come. Men like Calvin don't make threats and then walk away. They escalate until someone stops them. Logan strung another wire, testing its tension. The question isn't if, it's when. And you're ready for that? As ready as I can be. He looked at her directly. Elena, I won't lie to you. If Calvin comes with enough men, with enough firepower, I might not be able to stop them. But I can make it costly. I can make them work for every inch. And I can make sure you and Nora have time to get away if it comes to that. I'm not running anymore. If it comes down to your life or your pride, you're running. That's non-negotiable. Logan's voice was firm. I've got the satellite phone programmed with Jim's direct number. If things go bad, you grab Nora and you run for the hills. There's a cave system about 2 miles northeast. I'll show you on a map. You hide there and you call for help. Understand? Logan, understand? He moved closer, his hands on her shoulders. I need to know that if the worst happens, you'll survive. Both of you. I can't do what needs doing if I'm worried about you being stubborn. Elena stared up at him, and something passed between them. Understanding, trust, and something deeper that neither of them was ready to name. Okay. If things go really bad, we run. I promise. Thank you. Logan released her, stepping back. Now help me mark the map. I want you to know this property as well as I do. They spent the afternoon going over terrain, routes, hiding places. Nora joined them, treating it like an adventure game, memorizing landmarks with the ease of childhood. By evening, Logan was satisfied they knew enough to survive if separated from him. Dinner was quiet, everyone exhausted from the day's preparations and the constant underlying tension. Nora fell asleep at the table, and Logan carried her upstairs, tucking her into Sarah's bed with a tenderness that made Elena's eyes shine with tears. She really loves you, Elena said softly when Logan came back down. I've never seen her attached to anyone this fast. The feeling's mutual. Logan checked the security monitors he'd installed, scanning each camera feed. All clear. She's special, your daughter, resilient and brave and full of hope despite everything she's been through. She gets that from her grandmother, my mom. Elena's voice turned sad. She died 2 years ago, cancer. If she'd lived, maybe I would have left Calvin sooner, had somewhere safe to run. Tell me about your mom. So Elena did, and in the telling, Logan learned about the woman she'd been before Calvin Wright. She'd been a teacher, loved gardening, dreamed of owning a bookstore someday. She'd married Calvin young, mistaking his possessiveness for passion, his control for care. By the time she realized her mistake, she was pregnant and isolated from everyone who might have helped. He was so charming at first, Elena said, her voice distant with memory. Everyone loved him. My friends, my family, everyone thought I was so lucky. And I believed it too, until the first time he hit me. I was 4 months pregnant, and I'd gone to lunch with a colleague without asking his permission first. Logan's hands clenched, but he kept his voice calm. You didn't deserve that. You know that, right? I do now. But for years I believed his version, that I'd provoked him, that if I just tried harder to be a good wife, he'd stop. Classic abuse cycle. Elena laughed bitterly. I'm a smart woman, Logan. I have a college degree. I taught psychology. And I still fell for every manipulation, every excuse. That's the thing about abuse. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It gets inside your head and makes you doubt your own reality. But you got out. That takes incredible strength. It took him hurting Nora. That was the line I couldn't forgive. My own pain I could rationalize, could endure, but not hers. Elena's voice hardened. The moment I saw the bruises on her arm, I knew we had to leave or die trying, so we left. And you've been running ever since. Until now. Elena met his eyes. Until you. The weight of that statement hung between them. Logan knew what she was really saying, that for the first time in 6 months, she'd stopped running not because she couldn't continue, but because she'd found something worth staying for. Elena, he started, but was cut off by an alarm. One of the motion sensors had been triggered. Logan was moving before conscious thought, grabbing his rifle and checking the monitors. The northeast camera showed movement, a figure in dark clothing moving carefully through the trees. Then another figure. Then a third. Get Nora, Logan said, his voice deadly calm. Get her dressed and ready to run. Now! Elena didn't argue, just raced upstairs. Logan watched the monitors, counting. 3 men visible, but there could be more outside camera range. They were moving with purpose, trying to stay in shadows but not doing a particularly good job. These weren't military or law enforcement, just thugs Calvin had probably hired. The question was whether Calvin himself was with them. Logan's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Come out, Hale. Let's talk like men. Or I start shooting up your pretty ranch. So Calvin was out there. Good. Better to face him directly than wonder when he'd strike. Logan texted back, touch my property and I put you in the ground. The response was immediate. Big words from 1 man against 4. Send Elena and Nora out, and I'll leave you alone. Otherwise, we're coming in. Logan's response was to turn off all the interior lights, plunging the house into darkness. He heard Elena and Nora coming down the stairs, moving carefully. Status? Elena's voice was steady, but he could hear the fear underneath. 4 men, including Calvin. They're demanding you and Nora. I declined. Logan moved to the window, rifle ready. You remember the route to the cave? Yes. Then listen carefully. I'm going out there to engage them. While they're focused on me, you take Nora and run. Don't look back. Don't wait to see what happens. Just run. Logan, no. You can't face 4 armed men alone. I'm not planning to face them. I'm planning to use terrain and surprise to my advantage. He looked at her in the darkness, wishing he could see her face clearly. Trust me, Elena. I know what I'm doing, and I need you safe more than I need you here. But a gunshot cracked through the night, and one of the front windows exploded. Nora screamed, and Elena pulled her down to the floor. Logan returned fire immediately, aiming for the muzzle flash. He heard a cry of pain, at least a graze, maybe more. They're not here to talk, Logan said grimly. They're here to kill me and take you, so we're doing this my way. Elena, go, now, out the back door, and run. I can't leave you. You can, and you will. For Nora, for me. Because if you stay, I'll be too worried about you to do what needs doing. Logan grabbed her shoulder, squeezing hard. Go, please. Another shot hit the house, this time taking out a rear window. They were surrounding the building, trying to pen him in. Logan had maybe seconds before his advantage evaporated. Elena seemed to realize this. She pulled Nora to her feet, hugged Logan hard and fast, and whispered, "Don't you dare die on us." Then she was moving, pulling Nora toward the back door. Logan covered them, firing twice more to keep the attackers focused on the front of the house. He heard the back door open and close, heard their footsteps running into the darkness. Good. They were clear. Now he could fight. Logan moved through the darkened house like a ghost, using furniture and walls for cover. He'd lived here for 15 years, knew every creak and corner. The attackers didn't have that advantage. They'd be cautious, uncertain of the layout. He made it to the kitchen and slipped out the side door, the one they probably hadn't covered because it was partially obscured by the generator shed. The night air was cold against his face, and he could see his breath misting in the moonlight. Movement to his left. Logan dropped low as a bullet whined past where his head had been. He returned fire, heard a grunt and a body hitting the ground. One down. "He got Derek!" someone shouted. Calvin's voice responded, harsh and angry. "Then be more careful. He's just one man." Logan was already moving, circling through the barn. He knew these grounds in the dark, had walked them 1,000 times. He slipped between buildings, used shadows, became part of the landscape. The attackers were blundering around, calling to each other, giving away their positions. Amateurs. Dangerous because they were armed and desperate, but amateurs nonetheless. Logan came up behind one of them, one of the men from the mine, and struck with his rifle butt. The man went down without a sound. Logan relieved him of his weapon, a cheap 9mm pistol, and moved on. 2 down, 2 to go, including Calvin. "Where is he?" Calvin's voice was edged with panic now. "Marcus, Derek, where the hell are you?" No answer. Logan smiled grimly in the darkness. Fear was setting in for them now, the predators becoming prey. He let them stew in it, let their imaginations work against them. A twig snapped to his right. Logan melted against a tree trunk, becoming invisible. The third man passed within 6 feet of him, breathing hard, his gun waving nervously. Logan let him pass, then stepped out behind him. "Drop it." The man spun, and Logan tackled him before he could fire. They went down hard, fighting for control of the weapon. The man was bigger, heavier, but Logan had training and desperation. He got the gun away, used it as a club, and the man stopped moving. 3 down. "It's just you and me now, Calvin," Logan called into the darkness. "Your boys are done, and you're on my land where I'm legally allowed to defend myself. So what's it going to be? You leave now, or you don't leave at all." Silence. Then Calvin's voice, coming from near the barn. "You think you've won? You think this is over? I'll burn this place to the ground. I'll kill you and take what's mine. They're not yours. They never were. People aren't possessions. Elena is my wife. Nora is my daughter. They belong to me." Calvin's voice had lost all pretense of sanity. "And you're just some pathetic widower playing hero. You think you can replace your dead family with mine? It doesn't work that way." The words hit hard, but Logan pushed through the pain. "You're right about one thing. I can't replace Jennifer and Sarah. But I can honor their memory by protecting people who need protecting, by being the kind of man they believed I was. Noble, stupid, but noble." Calvin's voice moved, circling. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me where Elena and Nora went, and then you're going to let me leave, or I'm going to burn this barn down, and I know you've got horses in there. You want their deaths on your conscience?" Logan's blood ran cold. He could hear Ash and the other horses moving restlessly in the barn, sensing danger. Calvin was right. If he set fire to the building, the horses would burn. But if Logan revealed Elena and Nora's location, they'd die instead. "You won't do it," Logan said, though he wasn't entirely sure. "You set that fire, and the smoke will bring Sheriff Daniels running. You'll never get away." "I don't care anymore. I don't care about anything except getting my family back." Calvin's voice was raw, unhinged. "So make your choice, cowboy. The horses or the humans? What's it going to be?" Logan's mind raced. He could charge the barn, try to stop Calvin before he set the fire. But that would mean exposing himself, likely getting killed. He could retreat, save himself, let Calvin burn the barn, and hope the horses could be released in time. Or he could... The decision was taken from him when flames suddenly blossomed in the barn's far corner. Calvin had brought gasoline, had already poured it, had just been waiting for the right moment. The fire caught fast, feeding on old dry wood. The horses screamed. Logan didn't think. He ran for the barn, threw open the main doors, and started releasing horses from their stalls. They bolted past him, terrified by the flames and smoke. Ash was last, the big gray rearing and fighting the halter. Logan got it off, slapped the horse's rump, and Ash thundered out into the night. That's when Calvin hit him from behind. They went down together, rolling through straw and smoke. Calvin had a knife, was trying to drive it into Logan's ribs. Logan blocked, twisted, got a knee up into Calvin's gut. They broke apart, both scrambling to their feet, circling in the burning barn. "You ruined everything," Calvin screamed. "She was finally broken, finally ready to submit, and you gave her hope again. I'll kill you for that." "Then come try." Logan's voice was cold, lethal. He'd left his rifle outside, had nothing but his hands. But that was enough. Calvin charged. Logan sidestepped, used the man's momentum against him, drove him face first into a support post. Calvin's nose broke with an audible crack, blood pouring. But he spun back, slashing with the knife, opening a cut on Logan's forearm. The pain was distant, unimportant. Logan grabbed Calvin's wrist, twisted until he heard bones crack, and the knife fell. Then he hit Calvin, once, twice, 3 times, putting all his fear and rage and protective fury into the blows. Calvin went down and didn't get up. Logan stood over him, breathing hard, blood running down his arm. The barn was fully ablaze now, the heat intense. He grabbed Calvin's collar and dragged him out into the cold night air, away from the flames. Sheriff Daniels arrived 10 minutes later, 3 cruisers screaming up the drive with lights and sirens. Jim took one look at the burning barn, the 3 unconscious men zip-tied near the house, and Calvin Wright's broken form on the ground, and shook his head. "You've had a hell of a night." "You could say that?" Logan was sitting on the ground now, suddenly exhausted. His arm was bleeding steadily, and he was pretty sure he had cracked ribs from Calvin's initial tackle. "They came to kill me and take Elena and Nora. I defended my property." "So I see." Jim crouched beside him. "Where are the women?" "Safe. Hidden. I'll call them back once this is cleaned up." Paramedics arrived, started treating wounds. Calvin Wright was loaded into an ambulance under armed guard, his face a ruin, his wrist bent at an unnatural angle. The other 3 men were arrested, read their rights, taken away. The barn burned. The fire department came, but there was nothing to be saved. Logan watched it collapse, taking with it a structure his grandfather had built, thinking about the price of protection and whether it was worth it. Then he thought about Nora's laugh and Elena's tears and the way they'd made his dead house feel like a home again, and he knew the answer. Some things were worth any price. As dawn broke over the smoldering ruins, Logan pulled out his satellite phone and made the call. "Elena, it's over. Come home." Elena and Nora appeared on the ridge just as the sun cleared the eastern hills, 2 silhouettes against the golden light. Logan watched them descend, his injured arm bandaged but still throbbing, his body aching from the fight, but his heart somehow lighter than it had been in years. Nora broke into a run when she saw him, her small legs churning across the uneven ground. "Logan! Logan, you're okay!" He caught her with his good arm, lifting her despite the protest from his ribs. She wrapped herself around him like a vine, sobbing into his shoulder. "I thought he was going to kill you," she choked out. "I thought we'd never see you again." "Takes more than that to get rid of me." Logan's voice was rough with emotion. He looked over Nora's head to Elena, who had stopped a few feet away, staring at the smoking ruins of the barn. Her face was pale, shocked. "Your barn," she whispered. "He burned your barn." "Wood and nails can be rebuilt." Well, Logan set Nora down gently, then moved to Elena. "You're safe. That's what matters. But you lost everything in there, your grandfather's work, and it's my fault if we hadn't—" "Stop." Logan took her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. "None of this is your fault. Calvin made his choices. I made mine, and I'd make the same choices again in a heartbeat." Elena's tears spilled over. "You could have died." "But I didn't. We're all here. We're all safe. That's what matters." He pulled her close, and she collapsed against him, her whole body shaking with relief and delayed shock. Over her head, Logan saw Sheriff Daniels approaching, his expression carefully neutral. "We need statements," Jim said quietly. "But they can wait a few hours. Get yourselves cleaned up, get some rest. I'll come back this afternoon." "What about Calvin?" Elena's voice was muffled against Logan's chest. "In custody at the hospital, under armed guard. Multiple charges. attempted murder, arson, assault, criminal trespass, violating a restraining order. With the physical evidence and multiple witnesses, the DA says he's looking at 20 to 30 years minimum. He's not going to hurt you again, Ms. Wright. That's a promise. Elena sagged, and Logan tightened his hold. What about the other three? Hired muscle from out of state. They're talking, trying to cut deals. Seems Calvin promised them $5,000 each to help him retrieve his property. They're looking at accomplice charges for everything Calvin did. Jim shook his head. Stupid men making stupid choices for money. Tale as old as time. After Jim left, Logan guided Elena and Nora into the house. The interior was damaged, bullet holes in walls, broken windows, smoke damage, but structurally sound. Fixable. He settled them in the living room while he made coffee with shaking hands, the adrenaline finally wearing off and leaving him hollow. You're hurt worse than you're saying, Elena observed, watching him favor his ribs. Couple of cracked ribs, maybe. I've had worse. Logan brought her coffee, then collapsed into his chair with a groan he couldn't quite suppress. I'll live. You need to see a doctor. Later. Right now I just need to sit here and remember that we won. Logan closed his eyes, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. Elena, there's something you should know. When Calvin was burning the barn, he gave me a choice. Tell him where you were or let the horses burn. I chose the horses. I know you did, and you were right to. Was I? Logan opened his eyes, looking at her directly. Because in that moment, all I could think was that I'd rather die than betray you and Nora. And that's when I realized something. This isn't just about protection anymore. This isn't just about redemption or second chances or any of the things I told myself at the beginning. Elena had gone very still. What is it about? Logan took a breath, knowing he was about to step off a cliff with no guarantee of landing safely. It's about loving you, both of you. Somewhere between pulling Nora out of that well and fighting for our lives last night, you became my family. Not a substitute for what I lost, but something new. Something precious in its own right. The silence stretched. Nora, who'd been half asleep against her mother, suddenly looked very awake and alert. Elena's expression was unreadable. Logan, she said finally, her voice careful. We've known each other less than a month. I know. You could be confusing gratitude with love. I could be confusing safety with love. We're both traumatized and exhausted and not thinking clearly. Maybe. Logan's voice was steady despite his racing heart. Or maybe when you go through hell with someone, when you trust them with everything you are, and they don't break that trust, you learn more about them in weeks than you would in years of normal life. I know you, Elena. I know your strength, your courage, the way you'd sacrifice anything for your daughter. I know how you take your coffee, and that you hum when you're cooking, and that you still flinch at loud noises, and I love all of it. Elena was crying again, but this time it was different. I don't know how to do this, how to trust a man again, how to believe that you won't become Calvin, Logan finished. I won't, because I've seen what that kind of control does to people. I've seen what you've survived, and I would rather cut off my own arm than ever make you afraid of me. He paused, then added, but I'm not asking you to trust me completely right now. I'm just asking you to stay. Give this, us, a chance to grow into something real. No pressure, no expectations, just time and honesty and seeing where it leads. Nora, who'd been watching this exchange with rapt attention, suddenly spoke up. I told you that you needed a wife and I needed a dad. I was right, wasn't I? Despite the heavy emotion, Logan laughed. Kid, you might be the wisest person I've ever met. I know, Nora said it with complete seriousness. So are you going to kiss now? Because you really should. Nora! Elena was torn between laughter and tears. That's not how... We can't just... But Logan was already moving, crossing the space between them, giving Elena every opportunity to pull away. She didn't. When his lips met hers, it was gentle, tentative, a question more than a demand. She answered by leaning into him, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. When they broke apart, Nora was grinning like she'd just won the lottery. Finally, okay, so when's the wedding? There's no... Elena sputtered, her face flushed. Nora, sweetie, Adults don't just get married because they kissed once. Why not? You love him. He loves you. I love both of you. That's what families do. They love each other and they stay together. Nora's logic was unassailable in its childish simplicity. Right, Logan? Logan looked at this fierce little girl who'd turned his world upside down, then at her mother who'd taught him that his heart could still beat for more than just survival. Right, he agreed. But your mom's also right. There's no rush. We've got time to figure things out. How much time? Nora pressed. However much we need. Elena pulled her daughter close, then reached out to take Logan's hand. But we'll figure it out together, as a family. The word hung in the air, precious and powerful. Logan squeezed Elena's hand, feeling the rightness of it settle into his bones. The weeks that followed were chaotic in the best possible way. Logan's statement to the sheriff took hours, detailing every moment of the attack in his defense. The physical evidence supported his version completely. Calvin and his hired men had come armed and with clear intent to harm. The DA assured them that the charges would stick, that Calvin Wright wouldn't see freedom for decades. Elena filed for full custody of Nora, with Logan providing a sworn statement about Calvin's violence and the attack on the ranch. Her lawyer, paid for by the fund the town had surprisingly started after news of the attack spread, was confident the case was airtight. The town itself rallied in ways Logan hadn't expected. Neighbors he'd barely spoken to in 3 years appeared with tools and lumber to help rebuild the barn. The hardware store owner offered supplies at cost. The diner sent over meals for a week straight. People who'd respected his grief and isolation before now saw his protection of Elena and Nora as something worthy of support. Small-town life, Elena said, watching a crew of volunteers frame the new barn. They take care of their own. Are we their own now? Nora asked, passing nails to one of the workers with serious concentration. Seems like it, Logan answered. He was still healing, ribs taped, arms stitched and bandaged, but he refused to sit idle while others did the work. You okay with that? Staying here permanently? Nora didn't hesitate. This is home. Your home. Why would we leave? It was that simple for her. Logan wished adult emotions could be as straightforward. Elena's feelings were more complicated, though she was opening up more each day. They talked late into the night, learning each other's histories, fears, hopes. She told him about the early days with Calvin, about the slow erosion of her self-worth, about the shame of staying as long as she had. Logan listened without judgment, sharing his own story of grief and guilt, of the years he'd wasted in isolation. We're both pretty damaged, Elena observed one night, sitting with him on the porch swing he'd finally repaired. Nora was asleep inside, exhausted from a day of helping with reconstruction. Maybe that's why this works, Logan said. We understand each other's scars. Do you think that's enough? Understanding? I think it's a start. Logan put his arm around her shoulders, and she nestled against him with increasing comfort. The rest, trust, love, building something permanent, that takes time. But we've got time now. No one's chasing us. No one's threatening us. We can take this as slow as we need. And if I'm never completely healed, if I always flinch at raised voices or have nightmares about Calvin, then I'll be patient with your flinches and hold you through your nightmares. Logan kissed the top of her head. Elena, I'm not expecting you to be perfect or completely recovered. I'm just expecting you to be honest about where you are and what you need. That's all any relationship requires. She tilted her face up to his. When did you get so wise about relationships? I had a good teacher. My wife, Jennifer. She always said that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections you could live with and who could live with yours. Logan's voice was gentle with memory. She'd like you, I think. Would be glad I found someone to care about again. Tell me about her, Elena asked. Really tell me. I want to know. So Logan did. He talked about Jennifer for the first time in 3 years. Not as a saint he'd lost, but as a real woman with quirks and flaws and a laugh that could light up a room. He talked about Sarah's boundless energy, her tendency to ask impossible questions, the way she'd loved horses and mud puddles in equal measure. Elena listened and held him when his voice broke, and when he finished, she said, Thank you for sharing them with me, for trusting me with something so precious. Thank you for not being threatened by them. How could I be? They made you who you are. Without them, you wouldn't be the man who saved my daughter, who fought for us, who's teaching us both what real love looks like. Elena kissed him softly. I'm grateful they existed, even though I'm sorry you lost them. It was, Logan thought, exactly the right thing to say. The new barn went up faster than expected, a testament to community effort and modern construction methods. It wasn't identical to the original. Logan had updated the design, added safety features, made it more functional for his current needs. But it honored the old structure while being something new, something forward-looking, kind of like his life, he supposed. When the last board was nailed and the last coat of paint applied, the town threw a barn-raising celebration. The diner catered, someone brought a band, and the property filled with people laughing and dancing under string lights Logan hadn't even known he owned. Nora was in heaven, running wild with other kids her age, finally just a child instead of a survivor. Elena stood with a group of women, talking and laughing, looking more relaxed than Logan had ever seen her. She caught his eye across the crowd and smiled, and Logan felt something in his chest expand with pure joy. Sheriff Daniels found him near the barn, examining the workmanship with approval. Fine job they did here. Better than I could have done alone, Logan admitted. Never was much of a carpenter. That's what community's for, supplying skills you lack. Jim took a sip of his beer. Heard from the DA today. Calvin's lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. DA told him where to stick it. This is going to trial, and with the evidence we have, it's going to be a short trial. Elena ready for that? She's stronger than she thinks. Testifying will be hard, but she wants to do it. Wants Nora to see that standing up to bullies matters, that justice exists. Jim studied Logan thoughtfully. You did good here, Logan. Not just the fighting. That was self-defense, necessary. But the after, taking them in, giving them a home, showing them what a good man looks like. That's the real heroism. Logan shifted uncomfortably. Not sure about heroism. I just did what felt right. That's what heroes always say. Jim clapped him on the shoulder. Town's glad to have you back among the living, Logan. Missed you these past years. After Jim wandered off, Elena appeared at Logan's side. What did Jim want? Just updates on Calvin's case, and to tell me I'm apparently a hero. Logan's tone was wry. You are, you know, my hero, Nora's hero. Elena slipped her hand into his. So what are you going to do about it? Guess I'll have to live with the title. Logan pulled her close, swaying slightly to the music drifting from the celebration. Dance with me. Here? In front of everyone? Why not? Let them see. Let them know we're together. Elena hesitated, old fears rising. Logan, if we do this publicly, there's no taking it back. The whole town will know. They'll have opinions and expectations, and let them. Logan's voice was firm. Elena, I'm not ashamed of what we have. I'm proud of it. Proud of you, proud of us, proud to be the man you chose after everything you've been through. So if you're ready, if you want this, then let's show the world. Elena looked at him for a long moment, then at Nora, who was watching them with eager eyes from across the yard. She looked at the house that had become their home, at the community that had accepted them, at the future stretching out before them like an open road. Okay, she said finally, stepping into his embrace. Let's show them. They danced in front of the new barn while the town watched and smiled, and Nora cheered like it was the best thing she'd ever seen. Probably was. 3 months later, in the courthouse where Calvin Wright's trial was being held, Elena took the stand and told her story. Logan sat in the gallery, Nora beside him, offering silent support as Elena recounted years of abuse, of fear, of running. Calvin's lawyer tried to discredit her, to paint her as an unstable woman making false accusations. But the evidence was overwhelming: medical records, photographs of injuries, Nora's testimony about what she'd witnessed, Logan's account of the mine confrontation, and the attack on the ranch. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. When the verdict was read, Elena sagged with relief. Nora buried her face in Logan's shoulder, crying tears of release, and Logan felt the last piece of tension he'd been carrying dissolve. It was really over. Calvin Wright would spend decades behind bars, and Elena and Nora were truly free. Outside the courthouse, Elena was mobbed by her lawyer, by victims' advocates, by reporters wanting her story. She handled it all with grace, making a brief statement about survival and hope, and the importance of leaving abusive situations. But when she finished, she pushed through the crowd to Logan and Nora, and the three of them held each other while cameras flashed and questions were shouted. "Can we go home now?" Nora asked. "I want to see Ash." "Yeah, sweetheart," Logan said, his voice thick. "Let's go home." They drove back to the ranch in comfortable silence, each processing the day in their own way. When they pulled up to the house, freshly painted now, with flowers Elena had planted blooming in beds around the porch, Logan felt a peace he hadn't known in years. This was home. Not just a building, not just a piece of land, but the people in it and the life they were building together. That night, after Nora was asleep, Logan found Elena in the kitchen making tea. She looked exhausted, but lighter, like a burden she'd carried for years had finally been lifted. "How are you feeling?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "Free." She said it with wonder. "For the first time in 6 years, I actually feel free. He can't hurt us anymore. Can't chase us, can't control us. We're really, truly free." "So what do you want to do with that freedom?" Elena pulled back enough to look up at him. "I want to build a life, a real life, not just survival. I want Nora to go to school and make friends. I want to plant that garden we talked about. I want to—" She hesitated, then pushed forward. "I want to marry you, if you're still interested." Logan's heart stopped, then started again at double speed. "Are you proposing to me? I guess I am. Is that weird? Should you be proposing to me? I don't care who proposes to whom. I just care about the answer." Logan cupped her face in his hands. "Elena Wright, will you marry me? Will you let me be Nora's father, legally and officially? Will you build this life with me, permanently?" "Yes." She was crying and laughing simultaneously. Yes to all of it, 1,000 times yes. They kissed in the kitchen, where Logan had once stood alone, where grief had been his only companion, where he'd believed his life was effectively over. Now that kitchen was full of Elena's presence, of Nora's artwork on the refrigerator, of the smell of cookies Elena had baked that afternoon. It was full of life. "Should we tell Nora?" Elena asked when they finally broke apart. "She'll be insufferable. We'll claim she orchestrated the whole thing." "She kind of did, though," Elena laughed. "When she told you that first day that you needed a wife and she needed a dad, she set all of this in motion. Smart kid, takes after her mother." They told Nora the next morning over breakfast. Her reaction was predictably ecstatic, involving jumping, screaming, and a detailed interrogation about wedding plans that neither adult was prepared for. "Can I be the flower girl? Can Ash be in the wedding? Can we have cake? Will I get to call Logan Dad?" The questions tumbled out faster than they could answer. "Yes, probably not. Definitely yes." And Elena looked at Logan, suddenly uncertain. "That's up to Logan." Logan crouched down to Nora's level, meeting her serious dark eyes. "I would be honored if you called me Dad, but only if you're comfortable with it. There's no pressure." "Can I try it out?" Nora asked, "to see how it feels?" "Of course." Nora took a deep breath, then said carefully, Dad, can I have more juice?" She grinned. "I like it. It feels right. Okay, you're Dad now." Logan had to turn away for a moment, overcome. Jennifer and Sarah were gone, would always be gone, and nothing would ever replace them. But this, being chosen by this brave little girl who'd survived so much, was its own precious gift. A different kind of love, but love nonetheless. The wedding was small, held on the ranch under open Montana sky with the community as witnesses. Nora did serve as flower girl, scattering petals with theatrical flair. Ash, despite Nora's lobbying, was not in the ceremony but watched from the corral with patient interest. Sheriff Daniels gave Elena away, having become something of a father figure to her over the months. Logan's hands shook as he slipped the ring on her finger, still amazed that this was real, that he got to have this second chance. When the minister said he could kiss his bride, Logan did so thoroughly, to Nora's delighted cheers and the crowd's applause. And when he pulled back, Elena whispered, "Thank you for finding us, for saving us. Thank you for letting me." Logan replied. You saved me right back. The reception was lively, filled with music and laughter and the warmth of community celebration. At one point, Logan found himself standing with Jim, watching Elena dance with Nora. Never thought I'd see you smile like that again, Jim observed. After Jennifer and Sarah, thought you were done with happiness. So did I. Logan's eyes tracked his new family. Turns out happiness isn't something you find once and lose forever. It's something you can build again, differently, but just as real. Profound for a cowboy. Learned it from a 6-year-old who proposed on my behalf, Logan grinned. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for. As the sun set over the Montana hills, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Logan stood with his arms around Elena while Nora spun in circles nearby, laughing at nothing and everything. The barn stood solid and new, a symbol of what could be rebuilt after destruction. The house glowed with warm light, windows open to let in the summer evening, no longer a tomb, but a home. 3 people who'd been lost, 1 to grief, 2 to fear, had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances. They'd survived violence and threat and the darkness of their pasts. And they'd chosen each other, deliberately and completely, building something fragile and fierce and fundamentally unbreakable. A month after the wedding, Elena discovered she was pregnant. The news sent Logan into a panic of joy and terror in equal measure, old fears rising about loss and fragility and the 1,000 ways life could go wrong. But Elena held his face and made him look at her. I'm scared too, she admitted. Terrified, actually. But Logan, we can't live in fear of what might happen. We have to trust that this new life we're building is strong enough to hold whatever comes. What if I can't protect you? What if something happens and I'm not there? Then you're not there, and that will be terrible and tragic. But Logan, you can't protect us from everything. That's not what we need from you. Elena took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. We need you to be present, to love us, to show up every day and be the man we already know you are. That's all. That's everything. Logan let her words sink in, let them quiet the panicked voice in his head that wanted to wrap everyone he loved in bubble wrap and never let them face danger again. She was right. He couldn't control the universe. He could only control his choices, his presence, his love. Okay, he said finally. Okay, we do this together. All of it. All of it, Elena agreed and kissed him. Nora's reaction to the pregnancy news was predictable enthusiasm. I'm going to be the best big sister ever. I'll teach them everything. How to ride horses and climb trees and which places on the ranch are good for hiding and which are dangerous. Oh, and I'll share my books. Well, some of my books. The good ones. As Elena's belly grew over the following months, the ranch transformed further. The garden Elena had wanted flourished, providing vegetables for their table. Nora started school in town, making friends and bringing home artwork that covered every available surface. Logan rebuilt the chicken coop, and soon fresh eggs were part of their daily routine. They became a fixture in town. The cowboy who'd found his way back from grief, the woman who'd survived abuse and found strength, and the little girl who'd been wise enough to see what the adults couldn't. Their story became legend in the way small-town stories do, embellished and retold, a testament to resilience and second chances. The baby arrived in late spring, a boy with Logan's gray eyes and Elena's dark hair. They named him Samuel, after Logan's father, and Jennifer, Elena's middle name, honoring the past while celebrating the future. Nora held her baby brother with infinite gentleness, crooning to him about all the adventures they'd have together. Logan stood in the hospital room, looking at his wife and his daughter and his newborn son, and felt the last frozen part of his heart finally thaw completely. He would always carry Jennifer and Sarah with him. They were part of who he was. But they didn't define him anymore. He was more than his grief. He was a husband, a father, a man with a future worth living. What are you thinking? Elena asked, reading his expression. That Nora was right about everything. I did need a wife, she did need a dad, and somehow, impossibly, we found each other at exactly the right time. Fate? Choice. Logan smiled. We chose each other. Every day we keep choosing each other. That's more powerful than fate. Years passed. Nora grew into a teenager, still fierce and fearless, splitting her time between school, ranch work, and teaching her younger brother everything she knew. Samuel grew strong and curious, with Nora's boldness and Logan's quiet strength. Elena's garden expanded, and she started selling produce at the farmer's market, making friends and building a life completely her own. Logan rebuilt and expanded the ranch, adding cattle to supplement the horses, creating something that could be passed down to his children. The scars from that terrible night, physical and emotional, faded but never disappeared completely. Elena still sometimes woke from nightmares about Calvin, though they grew less frequent over time. Logan still carried guilt about Jennifer and Sarah, though he'd learned to balance it with gratitude for what he had now. Calvin Wright remained in prison, where he would stay for the foreseeable future. Nora never asked about him, and Logan and Elena never brought him up. That chapter was closed, its pages sealed. On the 5th anniversary of the day, Logan had pulled Nora from the well. They held a family picnic on the ridge where he'd first heard her cries for help. Nora was 12 now, all gangly limbs and growing confidence. Samuel was 4, chasing butterflies through the tall grass. Elena sat beside Logan on a blanket, her hand in his, both of them watching their children play. "Do you remember what I asked you that day?" Nora called over, having apparently been thinking about the same anniversary. "In the well?" "How could I forget?" Logan called back. "You proposed marriage on behalf of your mother before I'd even gotten you out of the hole." "I was very forward-thinking," Nora grinned, unrepentant. "And I was right. You did need us. We did need you. Look at how well it all worked out." "You're taking credit for the entire relationship?" Elena asked, amused. "Obviously. I'm the mastermind." Nora struck a dramatic pose. "Without my brilliant observation and suggestion, you two would probably still be sad and alone." "She's not wrong," Logan murmured to Elena, who laughed and elbowed him gently. "Don't encourage her. Her ego's already insufferable." But they were both smiling, both understanding the truth in Nora's words. A child's wisdom had set them on this path, had seen connections the adults were too wounded to recognize. And that wisdom had led to this, a family born not from biology or obligation, but from choice and courage, and the willingness to believe that broken things could be made whole again. As the sun began its descent toward the western hills, painting the sky in those dramatic colors that only Montana could produce, Logan gathered his family close. Elena leaned against his shoulder. Nora sat cross-legged beside them, teaching Samuel how to whistle with a blade of grass. The wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers, and in the distance Ash nickered from the corral, calling to the other horses. "This is perfect," Elena said softly. "This moment, right here. Perfect." "Yeah," Logan agreed, his voice thick with emotion. "It really is." And in that moment, on a ridge in Montana where a child's cry had once shattered his isolation, Logan Hale understood something profound. Life had taken everything from him once, his wife, his daughter, his purpose, his hope. But life had also given back, in forms he never expected, teaching him that love wasn't a finite resource to be hoarded and mourned. It was renewable, expandable, capable of growing in the most unlikely soil. He'd been a ghost, haunting his own existence. Now he was alive, truly alive, surrounded by people who'd chosen him as surely as he'd chosen them. They were a family not by accident or biology, but by decision, the most powerful kind of bond there was. Nora had been right that first day in the well. He'd needed a wife, and she'd needed a father. But more than that, they'd all needed each other, needed the reminder that survival wasn't enough, that broken people could heal together, that the human capacity for love was far greater than the darkness that tried to destroy it. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky and Samuel finally tired himself out, falling asleep in Logan's lap, the family sat together in comfortable silence. They were scarred and imperfect and still healing in some ways, but they were together, they were safe, and they were home. And in the end, that was everything. The little girl who'd once been lost in a well ran free through fields she called her own. The woman who'd spent years running finally stood still, roots deep and strong. The man who'd been hollowed by grief filled himself back up with purpose and love. And together, they proved what Logan had learned in the hardest way possible, that the end of one story could become the beginning of another, that loss and love could coexist, and that family, in its truest form, was something you built with your whole heart, one choice at a time. This was their story. This was their home. This was their happily ever after, hard won, and all the more precious for the struggle it took to achieve. And it was enough, more than enough. It was everything.